It's a positive film. It has heroes and villains, and that it essentially is a fun movie to watch. It's been a long time since people have been able to go to the movies and see a sort of straightforward, wholesome, fun adventure.
Well, it's a fantasy. It's not science fiction so much as it is space fantasy. And it's about people. It's finally about people and not finally about science.
The story, when you actually put it into words, is only so much nonsense to hang a great visual experience onto. It's the stuff that fairy tales are made of.
Sort of boiling down religion into a very basic concept. The fact that there is some deity or some power or some force that sort of controls our destiny works for good and also works for evil.
Marvellous, healthy innocence. Great pace, wonderful to look at, full of guts, nothing unpleasant. I mean, people go bang bang and people fall over and are dead, but, no horrors. A sort of wonderful freshness about it, kind of like a wonderful fresh air.
It's got whatever you want it to be. It's pure entertainment. It's like a roller coaster ride, and it can be interpreted as long as you enjoy it, which is the intention of it.
Hello and welcome back to Generation Skywalker. We're here for a bit of a special show tonight. It is our first anniversary, and who better to join me and celebrate this than some of the fantastic hosts we have over here. I've got with me Craig Spivey. Good evening, Craig.
Sorry, I was just helping myself to some Twiglets. It's a lovely spread you put on for us, Stuart. Can we afford all this?
Well, I didn't send any to the other two. Also, we have got with us Mark Daniels. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, mate. What time are these fantastic hosts turning up?
Well, maybe they'll pop in during the show. And finally, Dan Burgess. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening.
How are you?
Very well.
Grant and Jez aren't with us due to circumstances, but I'm sure you will hear them in some kind of form over the course of this show. So we're just taking a bit of a break from our normal shows to bring you this, because we started a year ago and it's been a lot of fun and a lot of work, and I think we've all bonded over it, but we haven't been able to see each other, which has been a real shame. So hopefully as we come out of lockdown we can take this to new levels, but we want to look back at what we've done over the last year.
Hi guys, Mark Hockley here. I just wanted to wish Generation Skywalker a very happy first birthday. Keep up the great work, guys.
So, Craig, I'm going to hand over to you just for why we're really doing this show tonight.
I mean, you could think that it's going to be a big self-congratulatory hoo-ha for ourselves, but really it's a big thank you. It's a big thank you to all the listeners. We're very aware that there are a staggering amount of podcasts out there. I think as of January last year, there were 850,000 active podcasts, and that equates to about 30 million episodes. Whatever you're into, that's bonkers. We know that. If you search for Star Wars podcasts on Podbean, 99 come up straight away. On Spotify, I stopped counting after it got to 1,000. So we want to acknowledge that. We want to acknowledge that, you have a big choice of things to listen to, a big choice of things to engage with. And whether you are just tuning in to check us out for the first time or you are a regular listener, thanks for sticking with us.
Hi, this is Grant from Generation Skywalker. Just want to say happy birthday, lads, on the first year of our project. I think you guys have laid really good foundations for this project to expand in the second year. I want to give a big shout out to Stu, because Stu is the major motivator behind this project, and there's a lot of research to ensure that we create the best content that we can. I think I need to give a shout out to Craig as well for all the work that Craig has done on the website, his blogs, and all of the graphical work he's done. And with Dan, Jez and Mark, I really feel like I'm working with an A-team that can produce really exciting and interesting Star Wars content for the next year as well. So happy birthday, lads. To our listeners as well, thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for supporting it in any way that you can. Hopefully you can become a part of this show, and to anyone who's actually came on and taken the time to be interviewed, I would really appreciate that kind of support as well. So here's to year number 2, guys, and I'm really excited about making some really exciting Generation Skywalker content. So thank you very much.
This came out exactly a year ago today when we launched this show. I think we have to acknowledge the year we've just lived through. We didn't plan it. We'd been working on this for 3-4 months, I suppose. But 2 days before we released our first show, all major sporting and cultural events in the UK were suspended as the country's coronavirus death toll rose to 11. What a number when you compare it to what it is now. And the day after we launched, Downing Street announced it would hold daily press conferences to update the public on the fight against the outbreak of COVID. The following week saw schools closed, swiftly followed by much of the leisure industry, with a full nationwide lockdown announced on March the 24th. Does anyone have any thoughts about the last year and doing the podcast?
It's definitely been a distraction for me. It's got me through, and I suppose for me, it's, I don't know what the listening audience think, but for me, it's been a real way of, I suppose, stepping away from that reality and almost having an event every month and talking Star Wars for a couple of hours.
Yeah, it's been nice. I know, Craig, you mentioned it the other day. I think all of us have been affected due to the pandemic. People have lost loved ones, and I know some of our listeners have. I know one of our guests has lost 2 members to COVID over the last year, and that's absolutely devastating. I'm sure it's touched a lot of our listeners. Let's just take a quick look at what we have done, because myself, Jez, Grant and Simon at the start, we've all worked and came from another Star Wars podcast, and that which was just an audio release each month. So one thing that we wanted at Generation Skywalker was to have an unlimited, what we could cover, anything to do with Star Wars, is nothing's off topic, and we wanted to do it across different media and different sort of channels, not just an audio podcast. So before we get into the shows themselves, Craig, and I come over to you because you were the talent behind getting the whole system set up behind the scenes, the getting it all pulled into one place.
That's been fun to do. So I'll break down all the things we get involved in. So listeners might know us for one thing, but this is our opportunity, just as we look back on the year, to highlight some of the other things we do. So obviously we are more than just a podcast, as you've just said, but it's still very much the core of what we do. Everything's built around the shows, really. We aim to put out at least 2 main shows a month, but we dot other shows around that in something like a themed month, like we did Book Month in September, or the run up to Christmas. We had a lot more shows sort of out there, but generally a couple of shows a month, and we try and keep each show typically between 1 and 2 hours. That kind of works. It's enough of a chunk to get deep with the subject, or a number of subjects, but it's not a 4-hour marathon for people that have you have to really commit to that. And this year so far we've put out 38 shows. Average is out at around 3.2 shows a month, and you can download, subscribe to the audio podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Alexa, anywhere really that you like to listen to podcasts. And we started running these, as we have established, back in March. And a couple of months in, we did a standalone show with myself, Mark and Stuart, all about the Helix project that we worked on. And I followed Helix on Twitter, and it was at the time when Twitter was very big, and it was very interesting and fascinating and distracting. And Helix tweeted out this picture of an old Oxford math set with words to the effect of, check out this old math set, isn't it cool? And I just happened to have one of my Star Wars Helix math sets sat on my desktop as an image, and I sent them that back as a tweet and said, it's kind of cool, but it's not as cool as this one. And they were fascinated with it. They were absolutely fascinated that this Helix product existed with with C-3PO and R2-D2 on it. And we got into a conversation in direct messaging about this collection. So I sent them a few pictures and of the display I had at home. They couldn't believe that they'd worked on Star Wars. You know, generations had passed and it had been lost in the mists of time.
Well, they literally didn't know that even done the line.
It turned out, and I didn't realise this at the time, I was talking to their PR company who were handling their social media. But then when you got into the business a little bit deeper, you know, there were people in there who didn't know that they'd done Star Wars. There were older people there as we met later on who absolutely remembered it and could tell you some stories. But you know, the people doing their jobs in marketing, it wasn't something that was common knowledge. Certainly, we rocked up to present this talk to them. We had a few samples with us. I don't know about you, Mark. I was expecting just to sort of have a chat in the boardroom with 3 or 4 guys from marketing.
Well, I've got to say, mate, that presenting to the warehouse staff when you got some burly warehouse lads at the back of the room and looking a bit nonplussed about what you're talking about, it was it was a bit daunting to say the least. Because I wasn't expecting that. I just thought it was going to be a few of the managers and directors and the marketing team in a boardroom, and we were just going to stand there and deliver our collecting track. And it wasn't. It was in front of the whole place. The factory floor workers, the pickers, the packers, the drivers. The cleaning lady was in there. The catering staff. It was the full Monty. There was about sort of 8 people in the meeting talking about this stuff, and Grant and I were sat down talking to one of the marketing girls at one end of the table, and Craig was at the other end of the table, sort of halfway through this presentation, and this marketing girl got this box out, and out she plucked the new Death Star sharpness. Now, bear in mind that we'd only seen flat artwork for this. This was the first product that we'd seen since the original release in 77, 78. And out came this little Death Star sharpener, and she said, we've got a gift for you. There you go. These are the first ones. These are the prototypes. And she handed one to me and one to Grant. And Craig, I'll never forget it, just stopped absolutely dead halfway through his conversation and just homed straight in and came over and went, oh, what have you got there? Not wanting to miss out at all. And of course, she gave him one of these prototype Death Star sharpeners, which slightly different because it was very much like a sort of Salvador Dali painting. You know, the round circle bit of the Death Star where the gun is. That, they couldn't get the artwork right on it. And on the initial production run, this round thing looked like it was drooping, it was melting, and it melted over the band. So it looked like one of those Salvador Dali clocks.
And because it was such a visual topic, as a bit of an experiment, took that show and had to go to see how it would work with sort of images and video clips over the top. And that seemed to go down quite well. So we took the decision to enhance all of the other shows going forward. Now, that's a fair bit of work on top of the audio shows because we don't just chuck them together. We do put a bit of time into finding the best quality images we can and then editing those and assembling everything in a way that makes it an enjoyable, well, hopefully an enjoyable watch for people. Obviously, some discussions are more visual than others, but some of the modern shows where we're talking about lots and lots of products that have been announced, just some of those shows feature over 300 separate images, so they're quite visually rich. But we think this is worth doing. We think it's worth doing for 99% of the shows that we do. Occasionally we'll do something like Trivial Pursuit Challenge where it's less relevant, but when we're talking about toys, when we're talking about collectibles, it really works. It really works to show the things that we're discussing. So, for me, I think they're ideal when you're working or you're somewhere where you can have it on a screen in the background. So if we are talking about something rare or interesting or unusual or new that you've not seen before, you can just glance up and see that on the screen and go and Google it. As a way of delivering the podcast, we think it's got a value. alongside that, we recognise that not everybody's got an hour or so to dedicate to a full podcast. So what we've started doing in the last few months is revisiting some of those shows, pulling out some standalone sections, packaging them up, and we've called them Skywalker Blasts. So these are videos that are coming in around 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and it's our hope that if people are looking for a specific topic, they might find these and that you've got a good overview in one place, hopefully nicely presented by delightful experts. The other thing we do is unboxings. So if you listen to our modern shows, we're buying stuff all the time. We're not claiming these are the most sophisticated unboxings on the internet, but between us, we've got things turning up on a regular basis. And if we remember to, we will film ourselves opening packages just to give you a first impression and to support some of the things we talk about on the show. So check out our YouTube and our website, and you'll see some unboxings, and there'll be, I'm sure, lots more of those to come over the following year. So that's all our video and audio content. We also write and compile blog posts on specific topics. Now, sometimes these will form part of a show. There'll be something that we will discuss, and the blogs are an opportunity to explore them in a bit more detail or put all the information in one place. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they are just something that we want to get out of our system, or a little nugget of our collections that we feel is worth capturing, or a collecting story. And they go on our website as blogs, and they can be short, they can be long. Mine tend to be long because I'm the worst self-editor on the team. They can all be found on the website, along with all the enhanced shows and links to the audio podcasts. GenerationSkywalker.com is where it all comes together. We've done a bit of work on the site lately, so you can find all these things a lot easier than you used to be able to. So if you use the navigation at the top, you can go to these different sections. And obviously no online entity these days exists in a vacuum. So we're also on all the relevant channels. So we use Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, primarily to let everyone know when a new show is out, or to highlight certain things we're talking about, but also to provoke some debate. And on the odd occasion, we might run a competition through the social channels as well. So, we're never far away from that stuff. If you do want to get in touch or share anything with us, please go and check out the social media channels. And we're also always looking at new things to get involved in. So we're not sure that our core audience are big TikTok users, but I'm poking around Clubhouse at the moment. So if any listeners are on Clubhouse, come and find me. I'm Craig Spivey on there. There is an active Star Wars universe group. So I think, as a platform, it's probably got some interesting potential to somebody like us running a podcast. And we'll also be announcing, when we get to the end of the show, a new social media string to our bow. So keep listening, and we'll be announcing a new way that you can engage all the fun stuff we get to do at Generation Skywalker.
I think, Craig, it would be a really nice addition. Okay, I'm going to knock this out here now. That you dress up as Star Wars characters and do the TikTok dances. I think that would be a welcome addition.
I think Jez is our costumed character of the team, surely. And he's not here to defend himself.
Hi, this is ZRSV. Just wanted to wish happy birthday to the Generation Skywalker podcasting team for 1 year of fantastic podcast and great shows and interviews. Wishing you all the best for the future. Take care.
So let's take a quick look at what's proved popular. Okay, let's look at the audio and the video. Now, audio-wise, let's just take a quick look at our top 3 at the moment. So, actually, our top 10 on I have the top 10 open at the moment. And generally, our regular shows, The Modern Way and The Old Fossils, they make up the majority, 7 of the top 10. Both our diecast shows at the moment are also in there, but our third most downloaded presently is episode 4 of Those Old Fossils. Number 2 is currently episode 1 of Those Old Fossils. And I say surprisingly, the Thrawn trilogy from Book Month is our most downloaded audio show at the moment. What I will say is when this comes out, it'll be exactly a month. But episode 8 of Those Old Fossils, the one that was based around reproduction toys, is getting decent numbers every day, downloads, and it is it is shooting up there. It's already in 7th after 2 weeks, and normally to get onto the top 10, you're normally looking at 3 to 4 months before you can even get close to the numbers. So that's going up quite fast as well. But it does seem that vintage collecting shows seem to be the ones that are on that leaderboard. Does that coincide with YouTube, Craig?
In some ways, I would say that the opposite would be true for the Thrawn show. Out of all the regular shows, that's one that sits quite low down on the viewing figures of the video shows. And it's interesting that's quite high in the audio shows. I wonder if that's got anything to do with The Mandalorian and Ahsoka and the teasing of her journey and Thrawn entwined in that, whether people are searching that. I don't know. But in terms of the top 3 enhanced shows, which I've got here, the third most viewed was show 28, which was the beer show, Come Let Me Get You Something, at 152 views. The second most watched show was episode 2 of Those Old Fossils, which was, I think I'm right in saying, the first Old Fossils show that we enhanced and put on YouTube. But the most watched show of all was the very first one we did, which was the Helix Reborn story. So I guess in some respects, the older shows there have garnered more views. And, in YouTube terms, these aren't big numbers by any standards, but we're talking about what are effectively 1 to 2 hour documentaries. So they're not, they're not 3-minute clips. So, I think in those terms, we're very chuffed that people are enjoying them and sticking with them and watching them to the end. So that's really good.
I'll tell you something that I do wonder. So Helix and the Beer Show both have good numbers on audio, but they're on the lower end. I'm also aware that things like the Helix show, when we recorded that, I think even at the start we say this is going to be better being viewed on an enhanced show with a video. The same with the Beer Show. So I wonder whether people would maybe stop their audio and go to the video for shows like that, because there's definitely so. The Helix one is wonderful, and you've got so many great images, things like the adverts which you did. I mean, visually it was needed, wasn't it, rather than just, although the audio's great. And you should go and listen to that. It's a great show, listeners.
It would be really interesting to know if anyone's ever started listening to an audio one and stopped and flipped over to watch what we're talking about. That would be very interesting.
Hi, this is Steve Savory, one-time participant in the wonderful Generation Skywalker podcast. I just wanted to get in touch with you guys and wish you a happy birthday. I think it's fantastic. What you guys are doing is just brilliant, and the diversity is fantastic too. So here's to many more years ahead. Well done, guys. Happy birthday.
It does not surprise me in the slightest that the repro show that we put out is racing up our chart at the moment. I certainly haven't had as much feedback as I have about any other show other than that one. People that, I speak to, I hear from, but, all of a sudden I'm getting messages left, right and centre from people saying that they'd enjoyed the show. And I enjoyed doing it. It was a good show to be part of. So it does not surprise me that particular show is as popular as it is, because it is such a touchy subject. So it's an interesting subject, and what we tried to do was do it with a level head. And I think that's probably what a lot of people are responding to and reacting to, is the fact that although we were all pretty much against it, we tried our best to see both sides. And I know that we're talking at the moment of doing another show at some point, and maybe another 2 or 3 shows where we get different people on with different views, different opinions, different backgrounds, to give their side of the story, because it's a much wider picture. So out of the shows, that doesn't surprise me.
You're right, Mark. I think even on the next Old Fossils, I think we've got to return briefly to that, because some of the feedback I've received has been quite incredible.
I don't think we're going to be able to do it briefly. I think we're going to need a follow-up show. I mean, I've had lots of comments as well.
I do as well. I think it's another full show at the very least. We're going to have to get some serious repro people on, so that they can put across their argument. I think that's only fair. I don't know how you boys feel about that, but I certainly think it needs to be approached. And then, some of the anti-repro guys, some of the more involved anti-repro guys, certainly have been approached by them, and it would be fantastic to get some of their opinions as well.
I'm pretty sure that many people saw the video that Michael French of Retro Blasting put out. What I find in the community at the moment is you've got these anti-repro people who are very harshly anti-repro. Any repro is bad, and people run these groups. You're going to be bad. You're going to be bad. Then you've got someone like Michael French who is completely the other way, who restores ships. He will take off stickers off ships and put reproduction stickers in their place. So there's no middle ground between these two groups.
There is the argument that new collectors or even old collectors who have been at this hobby for a long time or just come into it and are looking at the prices of little tiny black guns fetching over £100. You have to question the sanity of it, because it's very, very hard for somebody coming into this or somebody looking from the outside in and thinking, how on earth is a mass-produced tiny piece of plastic suddenly worth that amount of money?
Let's cut to the chase. We can't uninvent these things.
No.
Right? As it stands right now, we've lost that. We've lost that argument. We can't uninvent them. There's so many of them out there already that if they were to stop now, we would still have the problem. So what I'm arguing for is let's cool our jets. Let's cool our jets and let's open the dialogue where we're not insulting each other. I watched the Retro Blasting video and I was there with my head in my hands because it was 50% of it was just insulting people. And I'm like, you want the dialogue, then you need to cool your jets, man. And it's the same with the anti-repro. Well, I've got friends, wonderful people I know, who are so burnt up about this that I want to say to them with love, cool your jets, guys. Let's have the discussion. Let's be able to try and salvage something out of this.
I mean, I think this is a fascinating topic. I'm going to hit you with three. Okay, I'm going to go round. These are things I've struggled with, my own scruples. A quick yes or no from everybody. Okay.
Okay.
Replacement internal cog to fix your wing on an Imperial shuttle. Mark.
I don't have a problem with that.
I don't have a problem with that, and there's some precedence for that sort of thing in vintage robots.
Yeah, Stu?
Yeah, I think it's internal work. So
okay. Replacing rusty staples in a comic they're getting so bad they're staining the pages. Mark?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, mate. I won't tell anybody about that.
I'm not saying whether I've done these things or not, you'll notice. Lee?
I know people in the comic collecting thing, that's a big deal to them. So I kind of defer to their better judgment. If it was my comic, I'd be reticent to do that.
Stuart?
I'm going to be honest with you, it's never something that would even come into my conscience that there's a problem.
Last one. You've got a beautiful mint Helix pencil at the factory, but the nib's broken. Would you replace the nib with the nib from another pencil, Mark?
The nib?
Yeah.
What do you mean, the nib?
Well, the nib's everything. It's never been sharpened. It's got the factory end, but the point, the little bit of the end is snapped off.
You mean the lead?
The lead, yeah. It'd be very easy to just nick one from another pencil and just stick it in the top there.
Oh, Craig, man, you need to get out. You need to get out, mate. Honestly, lockdown has really got to you, hasn't it?
So that's a yes.
That's a yeah. I'm okay with that, mate.
See? Down with that?
I just wouldn't bother. You're not going to see it anyway, you know?
Do you know what, Craig? If it's bothering you that much, mate, go ahead. I don't. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it?
Hey, for a very small elitist part of the stationery collecting community, this is a big debate.
Let's have a little look back, because like I say, I think you just said, Craig, 38 shows is a lot of work in a year, you know, especially when there's been a couple of months where we've not put anything out. It's definitely been interesting, and then obviously the focus months. So let's go through and have a little look. Now, Mark, I'm going to come to you first, because the one thing about our whole team is we are all predominantly vintage collectors. I think that's why most of us know each other for vintage collecting originally. Without a doubt, there had to be a vintage show. Those old fossils was what we came up with.
Yeah, I mean, that's predominantly what we have in common. So it was, it's a natural progression from the Vintage Rebellion, which I know several of us sort of came from. And then obviously people like Craig, myself, and Dan came on board with our background as vintage collectors as well. It seems to be that's the mainstay of the podcast. But one thing that we sort of did talk about when we were talking about, we had that very drunk conversation. Was it Echo Live or Farthest From? I'm sure it was Farthest From, when you said you were going to put together a show and what have you. One thing that always came across was the fact that we're fans, first and foremost. We're Star Wars fans. It's not just about vintage collections and collecting stuff from back in the day. There's a wider scope to it. And I think for a lot of us, we are Star Wars fans. It's a much broader scope than just collecting vintage. So that's why Generation Skywalker came about. Yes, we're covering the vintage, and yes, we've got a lot of expertise and a lot of history involved in collecting the vintage side of things. But also, it's been interesting to see other side of Star Wars and Star Wars collecting especially. So those old fossils still proves very popular, and I do love the conversations we have. It's always fantastic to talk vintage Star Wars, but it's also nice to be able to break the boundaries every now and again and talk about other stuff.
So I always think with the vintage discussion, you need to find something that's I say fresh. Everything's been covered at some point, but new angles on it. And the last two shows that we've done for those old fossils was we look back at the auction houses in December and the state of the hobby and what had happened to the prices during lockdown, and then obviously the reproduction debate last month. I think that those are they made for good shows because we've got on the correct people. I mean, we had Lee Bullock come on for the reproduction show. I think Grant was with us in December when we did the auction house one.
That was a good episode. That was a really good episode to cover. And the state of the hobby, particularly this year, seems very strange that Generation Skywalker and the vintage collecting at the moment, the collectibles market as a whole, seems to have sort of grown together. It's like these two parallels. So we've been able to sort of see quite a rapid increase in popularity, prices, auctions, the quality of items, some of the finds that have been coming out. It's been really interesting. That was a great show. These things tend to have cycles, don't they? Certain things at a certain time seem to drive. Everybody wants them at the same sort of time, like tri-logos or miss cards or Meccano Square cards. And I think at the moment, this year, Palatoy 30 backs have been the thing to get hold of.
It does feel like that, doesn't it, the 30 backs? I mean, we had that Death Squad Commander that sold, what was that, for 26k?
That went for, 25,000 plus 30% fees. That was the lot. So there was 5 figures, wasn't there, in that lot?
Oh, that's correct. Yeah.
32,500 pounds that lot went for.
Wow. Yeah, it does seem that the Palatoy 30 back is where everyone seems to have their passion at the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, like I say, these things, for whatever reason, tend to go round in cycles. It's bizarre.
Well, one of the figures, I really like this figure. I would have loved to have added it to my collection, but there's no way I could afford it. It was a Palatoy General Mills Empire Strikes Back Black Bespin Guard on an Imperial Commander 45 back card back. Fantastic miscard there. Really unusual. I haven't seen many General Mills miscards. I don't know if you guys have.
That's the first one I've ever seen with that figure combination. Absolutely outstanding sort of mismatch. Definitely one in a million, that one.
Yeah, I just thought I would love to add that to my collection, but obviously people with bigger pockets also felt the same. To me, it was the most interesting thing that was in this auction. A really lovely piece, super, super rare, highly desirable, just a lovely piece. On the cheapest scale, one of the ones that surprised me was a Palatoy Empire Strikes Back 45 back Boba Fett on the card, 520 quid.
Yeah, that was a bit of a bargain, that was. But again, I think that card had condition issues. I think there was maybe cracks in the bubble. As far as I can remember, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but going on my memory, I think there were a couple of issues with the card. Otherwise, that would have been for a lot more. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I just don't see Boba Fett's on any card go for 520 quid these days. They all seem to be at least 4 figures.
And also, obviously, those are fossils, the early episodes, where we discussed all sorts of things. Craig did some amazing blog posts on Luanawa, is it? Have I said that right?
Yeah, Lianawanawa.
Oh, close enough.
Yeah, close enough.
Better than what Dan would have pronounced it as, yeah.
Well, like Ayla Secura.
Custard guys.
Yeah, at least I don't get it completely wrong. And obviously we've had some guests, haven't we? I think Mark Cockley, Steve Savory have both been on those old fossils with us. Both very heavily indebted in vintage collecting as well. So fun one to record, that's for sure. And one of my favourite ones that, I mean, we've just talked about different types of shows there for those old fossils, but the Halloween special. I mean, Craig, you came up with this whole show idea from a movie. What was it?
The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Dr. Moreau, that is it. Yeah, I can't even remember the name of it. Just as a whole concept, I found it absolutely fascinating. And it was one of the best ones I'd sat down to research for, because I sat down and watched a bonkers movie. And it really was a bonkers movie. And then, like, the whole concept, you were right about creatures crossed with humans. And when you delved into Star Wars, just how much was in it. I just found it a really fascinating topic to discuss and to research. It was really, really good.
All well and good. What's this got to do with Star Wars? I am thinking, of course, of George Lucas's fascination in creating alien races by taking very earthbound animals and through his creativity and through the medium of his art, turning them into human-like beasts. So looking at things in that kind of rather grim context, I thought it would be fun in a Halloween way to just explore this, kind of reimagining George Lucas as this mad scientist surrounded by these creations. I know what I'll do. I'll take a walrus and I'll take his head and I'll put it on a man. That kind of thing. So this idea around the island of Dr. Modesto. And for those who don't realise why Modesto, that's where he grew up, town in California. So it kind of works. Begins with an M and ends in an O. So why not? First, we need to sort of discuss this idea of kind of animal, human, head swapping techniques of creating aliens. So, I mean, what do we think? Am I onto something here? Have I got a point? Do you think that way of creating aliens works? Do we think it was a good idea at the time? You know, does grounding a species in the look of a familiar animal help us relate to it? I mean, George Lucas was all about this used universe. So rather than being Greedo-style bug-eyed monsters, does having this connection in earthbound creatures help us kind of go, yeah, I can transpose some of what I know about a squid onto that character or whatever. They're slimy and a bit slippery. Or is it just flat out silly? Did we think that at the time? Have we learned to accept it? Do we see beyond it now? What do we think?
I think it really helps spark your imagination when you're watching it, especially in the first Star Wars film, like the cantina scene particularly. You've got so many different types of creatures there. You just know that you're following one story that's passed through. In any given corner of that room, there's another story. And that was a brilliant thing about Star Wars, and it's sparking our imagination. And then when we bought the toys, we could have all those other stories. Sure, you start off buying the figures of the heroes, but once you start getting into the aliens and you know, the creature cantina kind of scene, then you just kind of have your own little adventures. And it just went off from there. I think that's why some of us were still playing with these things when we were 15, and some of us are still paying out silly money from when we're in our 40s. You know, it's just that imagination that it spiked. And I think having it kind of anchored partly in reality kind of gave us that familiarity with it, or that access point, you know, to kind of that jumping off point with our imaginations.
I would agree with that. Stuart, do you have a view?
It's not an uncommon thing, is it, when you go back to old movies, to see a creature on two legs? I mean, I'm now trying to think of an example, but...
Yeah, because you've got Medusa and things like that.
Yes, but Clash of the Titans was, 1981, so after Star Wars, but Clash of the Titans is a prime... Yeah, it's a great example. There is half-creature type things in that, but there is that kind of old thing. I think you've got in the show notes, Flash Gordon, we have it as well, don't we, Craig? So
yeah, I mean, George wanted to remake it, didn't he? So we had the Lion Men and the Lizard Men, and maybe that was an influence. I don't know.
Yeah, quite possibly, yeah.
But yeah, I think it relates to him, you know. I'm not being funny, but how many people look like Walrus Man that we know? I mean, Jez and Si can't be here tonight, but they spring straight to mind.
Paint them green and there you go.
And obviously, Craig, you singled out at Christmas the pen and poster discovery.
You already said a lot of vintage has already been covered, and it's, we can come up with fresh new takes on things, but it's quite hard to come up with actual fresh new items. So when something does come along that is a little bit unknown, it's just really great to look into that and research it. And that's what's been great for me personally about working on the show, is I've always been interested in sort of looking into things and finding out a little bit more about the things I buy for the collection, but I've been able to take that to the next level working with you guys. So yeah, things like the Penner poster that we discovered, and I'm sure there'll be other things that we'll unearth as we go on. But those old fossils is a great platform to showcase that stuff. Poster in question really sort of caught my eye. To describe it, I'm sure everyone's familiar with the genre of posters that you colour in yourself. So, largely line art work that leaves lots of space for children to colour in and make their own. And this is a character montage in the best tradition. You've got Vader at the top, flanked by stormtroopers. You've got little ships and vehicles flying around, little kind of energy trails. You've got the heroes in the middle, Luke, Leia, Han and Chewie. You've got Vader and Ben, just very unusually depicted, like they're about to start a fencing duel either side of this poster with their lightsabers kind of vertically in front of them. And at the bottom, you've got a montage of 3PO, R2, you've got the Tusken Raiders attacking Luke, you've got Grand Moff Tarkin in there, you've got Death Squad Commander, Jawas, and it was an image I'd never seen before. I like papery things, I like arty things, and it just caught my eye, it really did. But I didn't kind of go hell for leather for it. I saved it in my watch list and moved on, but I kept going back to it. I was very, very intrigued. It's an unusual thing, we've all seen prototypes and produced things, toys, all the time, but for things like this, the quirkier, beyond the toys, it's few and far between, so it was just nice to come across something that was a bit different.
So that was those old fossils then. So the other concept was a modern show. One of the reasons I wanted to step away from the Vintage Rebellion at the time, and a lot of people have asked me when I've spoken to people, why did you leave? But it wasn't anything to do with TVR particularly. The shows were too long for me at that point with the workload. But it was more the fact that I wanted to do other things, and modern collecting was something which I was dipping my toe into. And I used to love Toy Run. That ended after 2 years, and I definitely feel there was a gap. There's a lot more modern podcasts than there is vintage ones. But Dan, can you tell us about the modern way? Because I approached you to come on a modern show, and then we couldn't get rid of you.
I'll be honest. When you initially asked me on, I was a bit disappointed I wasn't going to be on the old fossils. So I was looked down my nose a little bit modern. That's not to say that I didn't collect modern, but vintage is the passion. And I think from our point of view, certainly when we started the show, I think it was more of a modern show from a vintage collector's point of view. But I think as we've got better at it and we're covering things more regularly, I think we're certainly got a lot more, I don't think expertise would be the right word, but I think we're a lot more awareness and appreciation of what's out there. The show itself, it covers, we run through all of the products that are coming out or have been announced in the month since we last recorded, and we have a run through those and we talk about those and get some great insights into Mark's feelings about things that get carbonized or painted funny colours.
So Mark, we've got a Black Series 6-inch carbonised Boba Fett. Might we need more Fett?
Absolute mock. It is just the worst possible way of me saying, how can we wring any more cash out of collectors by simply splashing a paint job that has absolutely no relevance, no connection with the figure at any point during a film or a figure's history. It's dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. It's just a way of wringing more money out of people that just have to have more Boba Fett things. It looks shocking. The packaging is shocking. The product is just, I just hate it. Hate it.
But what do you really think, mate?
Can somebody help me understand why people would sit round a table in a production meeting? And I work in the toy industry. I know how these things work. And it just baffles me that people can come to a decision and say, right, how can we use the same moulding for a figure and do something different? And somebody's come up, why don't we put a glitter sort of shiny effect on the painted figure? It makes no sense. None whatsoever. It looks awful. I mean, if they were going to do something with it and something different and it looks good, okay, fair enough. You know, I'll let that one slide. But there's no excuse for this thing to be in production at all.
It's a bit bizarre, isn't it? It's like somebody's coming, guys, we just sunk a load of money into this carbonizing technology. You know, what can we use it on?
Oh, Boba Fett. Everybody loves Boba Fett. The collectors will hoover it up. We could just paint it all black and they'd buy it.
But I think we're all open to being exposed to new things, whether it's, you know, tikis or steel books, and most importantly, I hope our listeners are as well, that you know they're joining us on this journey and they're looking at these things as well. I mean, certainly off the back of, you know, the recordings we've done in the last 6 months, I've pre-ordered probably about, I wouldn't want to add it all up, but a lot of stuff, whether it's tikis or hot toys, been really, really good fun, and I've enjoyed it. And that for me is the biggest part of it, because I think I was at a point in my collecting, certainly a vintage, where, I mean, we've already spoken about the prices. It's beyond now what I'm willing to pay for a lot of things. So I've kind of got most of the things that I want, and the things that are kind of floating out there is big money. And I didn't think I'd be saying this a year ago. I think I'd rather sink that sort of money now into hot toys, because you have got me hooked on those, which I know was your ambition from the start, Stu.
Well, you said that you couldn't justify paying the price of a hot toy, and then you bought like 3 really close together.
No, 4 a month. If it's 4 or 5, I don't know. I've lost count.
The pre-orders, isn't it?
But it's all to. I suppose it's to do with. There's a bit of me that's kind of like, if you look at a mint on card, because that's what I've primarily collected in the past, and there aren't many mint on cards now. You know, there's probably Return of the Jedi cards and a few other things sitting around the edges that you could spend £300 on now and get a decent one. I suppose it's just time and money and resource and where you're at in your collecting journey. But yeah, it's opened up my eyes to a lot of new things. But in terms of highlights and things, I think it has, like I said at the start, it's been great fun. We had Jez on a modern show talking about Han in Carbonite. I think he made some choice comments about one of the figures he was picking out as his Han Solo of the month.
Jez, can you round it off with a good choice? But there's a lot of still good ones here that we've not covered.
Is there really? Because very much like Mark, for me, it's the vintage. Because I'm going to talk you through a couple now, because I've tried to find one which I like, and they've all got issues, right? There's nothing which really sticks out to me, right? So first of all, the commemorative The Empire Strikes Back 3-pack from 2004, the original collection. You've all seen, what's that movie? Men in Black, right? Where you've got the guy who's wearing someone else's skin and nothing just appears to fit right. Well, I'm looking at this image and I've got a guy who looks like he's wearing someone else's arm and it's just all wrong. And then when you zoom in on his face, it's like he's having an anaphylactic shock or he's eating a kiwi or something or other, and it's just not gone down well. Everything about this figure is just entirely wrong, right? So that's that one, and I'm going to chin that one off, right? I then jump ahead to 2011, the vintage collection. Again, right, this is Empire Strikes Back. Han wasn't that old. This guy, when you zoom into his face, it looks like he needs a bus pass. People, what they're doing is they're putting Harrison Ford's head from now onto his best been costume. This guy looks like he needs a meal. I mean, he's got such a scrawny chicken neck. He looks like that woman who's getting married all the time in Coronation Street. He's bow-legged. It's just, I don't know. What's her name? She is a Doris in Coronation Street. Deirdre Barlow. Yeah, she's got a scraggy neck. This guy's looking like he's 60 years old with a scraggy neck, and he's got one eye looking for you, one eye looking at you. Rubbish figure, 2011. And then to come up with a final trifecta of crapness, this one I was thinking, this is all right actually. Saga Legends, 2015. Nice, reasonable looking face with regards to Harrison Ford and that age. However, the articulation of the head, it's like he's just got this line going across his neck, like he's just been garroted, and it just looks wrong. So all in all, maybe this is why I was never a fan of modern up until tonight, because these are all pretty awful figures. Oh no, this is it, the worst one ever. The Last Jedi Collection 2017. The guy looks like he's staggering out of a bar drunk. He looks like he's 70. And have you guys seen this? Go to the one which is 2017 2-pack with Boba Fett, and he's just stood there like he doesn't know what time of day. He doesn't know what day it is. And it's an embarrassment. It's just like, mate, you've let yourself go. And they're shocking.
What I'd like to say to you, Jez, is okay. It's a vast plane, the modern area.
Yeah.
You're not going to like everything. You dip your toe in. You don't have to be a completist. Buy what you enjoy. Now, incredibly, Jez, you've gone through a lot of them there, but you've missed two vital ones. One, to me, the greatest. But let's first of all just go to Han Solo Torture Rack, 2007. Okay? He's in his best bin outfit. Yes, his face is in pain and his neck's pulled in, but it's because he's being tortured, and it comes with a torture rack. I mean, if you don't want that, that is amazing. You know, Mark earlier said he might buy the best bin freeze chamber set if he could get a torture rack. There you go, Mark, buy that. Stop moaning. That is amazing.
It's horrible, isn't it? His face. It's just like it's like he's Ted Danson. It's just all wrong. Everything about that is wrong, apart from the torture.
Hips.
Yeah. Well, he's been in torture, hasn't he? And
He's moved his pelvis.
Well, he's in so much pain, everything's just gone, you know? I'm surprised I overlooked that, but I'm surprised no one's picked up on it. Okay, you've got all these great figures, 30 years of figures. But in 1997, they brought out Han Solo Bespin gear on a green card with his sexy legs. And he's an amazing figure. But then not only that, they then re-released him in the commemorative coin collection. And he comes with a coin. I mean, while we're looking at this, we all know that the power of the Force rules. We've spoken about it several times tonight. The rest of you need to get behind me and Mark with our push here, because these are incredible. It's an incredible figure. We got to say, it comes with two guns.
Stu, if you're not careful, mate, you're going to be doing this podcast on your own.
Well, because you'll be off buying Power of the Force.
Yeah.
It's a nice figure, Mark. I'm a little. Well, you had the Minoc. There's been a lot of love for the Minoc Hunt. How about that figure from 1998? It's a great figure. Granted, it's the same figure with a face mask on, but hey.
That was like the little cinema scene, that one.
Yes, yeah, you're right.
They were nice. I did quite like those.
Was a nice box set, actually. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I think there's been some. You know, Jez has picked out. He's gone through and just trying to find fault. You know.
No, I'm that Minoc scene, right? When you look at it and you look at some of the pictures, the way in which he's sort of stood over to one side. I'm going to tell you now what he's doing. He's trod in some dog's muck and he's wiping it off. He's leant over and he's trying to wipe his shoe. For me, I'll always see Han Solo wiping dog muck off his shoe look. It's not a good look.
And then, the Tiki bit, that I think it was on one of our early episodes, maybe the first or second one, when Craig took us through his blog. That was brilliant. Really, really good. It's been, really, really good fun. And we've all ordered, I think most of us have ordered the Razor Crest. Who would have thought that a year ago? We'd be all invested in a Hasbro Pulse project.
Mm. Any update on your...
I was going to say, I said that now. Is you any update on yours?
Not at this time to report. Okay, maybe on the next Modern Way.
Hello, folks. This is Ross Barr calling you from the United States of America, New Jersey in particular. Wanted to wish the folks on Generation Skywalker a happy one-year anniversary. It's pretty amazing to me that you survived past the episode that I was on, that I wasn't able to crater your podcast. But you made it, continued, you survived the pandemic. If you can survive that, you can survive anything. I definitely listen. I enjoy it. You make me feel good about Star Wars, which is a good thing. We need more feeling good about Star Wars in this world, and you guys provide that. Keep it up. Appreciate all that you do, and best wishes on a happy first-year anniversary. See you guys.
I just point out a couple of things before I ask Mark a question about modern. I mean Tiki. I can remember in Celebration when it was in London. That was when I first saw Tiki. I saw a Han Solo and Greedo 2-pack on the shop floor, and I think the Falcon was there. And then in Chicago last year, they had the Rancor in the shop. And I looked at that and thought, what is that? And then Craig did that Tiki, the article and the whole backstory behind Tiki, and it really did wet my whistle. And I've looked at it more and more and more, and I mean, my office is overflowing with Tiki mugs, and a Tiki bar is definitely the first thing that's going to happen to my garage once it's converted. So yeah, complete U-turn for me. And I know Grant felt the same way as well. And then on the last Modern Way, we heard that he had bought himself a Tiki Tauntaun. So there's definitely, sorry, Mark, Tauntaun.
Okay, so what's a Tauntaun? Is that a sat-nav thing?
It's a Tom-Tom.
What is Tiki? It's a good question. I think are you up for a little bit of a potted history?
I would love a potted history.
So Tiki is a trend that originated in the US. It sort of takes its aesthetics and its vibe from the art and the culture of the South Pacific Islands, and it's sort of enjoying a bit of a renaissance today, slightly ironically, as it's a revival of its kind of boom time, which was the sort of 50s and early 60s. It's tied to that whole kitsch retro Americana thing. It goes hand in hand with sort of the atomic age and vintage pin-up girls, hot rods, and old-timey rock and roll, all of which I'm quite partial to. So its origins in Polynesian mythology, Tiki was the first man on Earth, and it's a term that's widely used to describe these wooden carved effigies of gods and ancestors, which is a sort of key element that's inspired a lot of the sort of pop culture mashups that we're seeing today. So it's always been associated with escapism and good times, and while it's synonymous with kind of 50s and 60s, its origins actually date back to the 30s, when the first Tiki bar, which was called Don the Beachcomber, opened in LA. And this was the brainchild of a guy called Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gant, who travelled the world, explored the Caribbean and the South Pacific, and he came back to the States. And he wanted to set up this bar that kind of captured some of that magic. So he changed his name to Don Beach, and he set up this Tiki bar. And the menu was loosely inspired by the kind of things he'd experienced out there, tropical flavours, and it kind of set the template for the sort of Tiki culture that endures today. But when it became really popular was after World War II. So young GIs were sent out, deployed to the South Pacific. They were specifically on islands like Tonga and Fiji, Hawaii. They kind of developed this taste for the tropical, which they came back and sort of passed on to the rest of the nation in the post-war years. So when you think about Tiki style, it's got a very, very defined look, and it's sort of typified by things like bamboo and thatched. And again, these carved hardwoods, these Tiki idols, these masks, a little bit of kind of nautical props, nets and buoys kind of thrown in there, tropical flowers, exotic ladies in grass skirts, and then this exotica sound of ukuleles and Hawaiian guitars. So there's this whole kind of sort of visual and experiential elements that define Tiki culture. But one of the main things is they have these rum-based kind of drinks, which were always elaborately served with flowers and little parasols, and they were originally in coconuts and hollowed out pineapples, and eventually people started to create these kind of ceramic Tiki mugs, which people would take home from the bars as souvenirs, just like they would if they'd gone off to the South Sea Islands on holiday. And they became very collectible. And alongside that, you'd have like the stirrers and the swizzle sticks. So this whole kind of paraphernalia grew up that people would take home and wanted to continue the experience at home. So this idea of little Tiki bars in basements and garages and spare rooms at home became the in thing. If you had a Tiki bar, you were kind of happening. But it's had a recent revival, which has, I think, been driven by retro-loving hipsters. And it's still very much about escapism, that kind of the wackiness of the drinks, and you go in these places and they're very, they transport you somewhere else. So Star Wars met Tiki when a company called Beeline Creative, who'd created the Star Wars beer steins, if you remember those, pitched the idea of these Star Wars figural Tiki mugs to Lucasfilm as recently as 2016. And in 4 short years, they've got this product range now that just covers this massive range of pop culture properties that are almost Funko Pop levels. You name it, there's probably some wacky little tiki mug, whether it's Universal Monsters, Star Trek, Rick and Morty. They're all kind of they've all been sort of covered.
And obviously Hot Toys as well. I mean, I bought my first Hot Toys on the day Carrie Fisher died, and I just love them. Again, running out of space at the moment, but Hot Toys was one thing that I covered with Chris Leddy, who runs the Six Scale Scavengers, and that was a fantastic interview to do with Chris, because that passion there for that.
It's funny how your perspective changes, and you look at a vintage carded figure, and it's like, it's great at what it is, but then you look at the Hot Toys and you look at what you get for the money and the detail and accessories and likeness to the actors or characters and that sort of thing. It's just so different. I mean, once I got my first Hot Toys in hand, I was like, holy cow, this is, next level representation for the character, and it's just different. I mean, there's a lot of guys that look at the vintage stuff and it's like, well, that's not a perfect representation of that character in the movie. So it's cool, but I want that representation to be as movie accurate as possible. This is like, you can kind of plan out things, whether it be, certain characters that you're looking for. You can plan things out to, that it works financially for you. Some companies like Sideshow, Sideshow.com, they're a distributor of Hot Toys. You can do payment plans through them, which can help a lot of collectors be able to afford these. There's so many retailers that sell Hot Toys that they're not that, you can find one somewhere. And it's not like some vintage or modern prototype thing where it's like there's only one of them that is, so you don't have that feeling of, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to have that. Well, eventually, something will pop up for it, and you can add it to your collection if the price is right. And you definitely have to be careful financially and make sure, because you can get crazy with the pre-orders, and then all of a sudden, if they release all these figures in a certain period of time and you've pre-ordered all of them, you could get into trouble pretty quick. This Tarkin and Vader came as a 2-pack, and that's where I got it. And the Vader in this picture is kind of a hybrid of the original A New Hope Vader that Hot Toys made and the original Rogue One Vader that they made. And a lot of people feel like this is the best version of Darth Vader that's come out. A lot of people favor the Rogue One version, but it's a little bit of a combo of them. But yeah, I just love this setup, and it comes with a chair, and it comes with a interrogation droid and all sorts of goodies, and just a great 2-pack.
But Mark, I have to come to you on modern, because this has got to be the big issue 10. So let's just have a quick listen.
Mark, do you dabble in modern?
I don't, mate. I haven't got a single thing. I don't even know why you've asked me to do this, because I can't stand the modern stuff.
I don't know what I'm doing here. I hate all modern. Do you remember saying that?
I do.
Then over the course of that show, you decided you were going to buy the 40th anniversary Probots. You were going to maybe get involved in a bit of Hot Toys, quite like the Mandalorian runner figures in the Black Series. Have you ordered or pre-ordered anything, Mark? Anything modern?
I have. I've popped my modern cherry. I've gone for a Probot.
Anything else, Mark?
I'm afraid to say yes. I've ordered. I've pre-ordered the Boba Fett Black Series helmet. I'd hovered over that buy it now button for so long that I just thought, I've got some birthday money. I've got a couple of Amazon vouchers, and I just thought, why not? It fills me with such joy to see a company actually take some time out and come up with some packaging that actually looks decent.
Mark, the Lego Cantina, in hand, everything you thought it was?
And more. Does not disappoint. I love the shed. I think it's got as much charm and as much character as the Falcon. I think they've really sort of hit the nail on the head. They've captured exactly what certain things about Star Wars, what resonates with fans. And as much as, the living characters play a big part, some of the inanimate, non-organic things are as important, and the Falcon being one of those things. And I love it. I think it's great. And I think I'm sorely tempted to buy one myself.
On the last show, you said I will definitely be purchasing this, pull the trigger on this. Have you?
Absolutely. I waited till the last minute to do it, but I was always going to buy it because I think a few people have been moaning about the price of it, but I think when you actually weigh it up, literally, I think it's not a bad deal really for all the bits and pieces you get with it. I love them. I think they're great. I think they've hit the nail on the head with the retro one. I don't understand people moaning about there's not many colours, the sculpting's poor, I don't like those capes. That's what the Black Series is for. That's what the Vintage Collection is for. This is the Retro Collection. They're made to look like they were made and sculpted back in the 70s and 80s. And I think they've got it absolutely right. I think the Queel looks fantastic. And I love the vinyl capes, because that takes you straight back to that vintage era. I think they're great, and I can't wait to see the card art for these. It's going to be brilliant, and I'm going to put them in case. I'm going to get some cases off Christian at GW Acrylic, and I'm going to have them on display right next to my Razor Crest. The only modern thing I have sort of pre-ordered is the Mandalorian Nerf rifle. I've got that in pre-order. As soon as they were available on Zavvi, I've got to have one of those. I'm just absolutely stoked for the Razor Crest. I cannot wait for that thing to start landing. Really excited for that. I think I would echo some of Dan's points that he said, that I think you get to a point with a collection when you've been doing it for that long and prices become a bit too heavy, and you just think, I can't really justify spending this kind of money on this stuff anymore. And also, the stuff I actually want is very, very thin on the ground these days. You know, collectors collect, don't they? They always need something to collect. I think what the show's done for me is it's highlighted, actually, there's a Star Wars collecting world beyond sort of for me, it's 1982, because I don't really collect anything else after that. The modern stuff, so Black Series, I mean, I've got several pre-orders for Black Series figures. I never thought I'd see the day. I'm not quite ordering carbonised Cara Dunes at the moment, but I have got a Razor Crest on pre-order, which, you know, everybody knows. Most of us have got a Razor Crest on pre-order, as Dan said. I've just pre-ordered the Wrecker figure for the Bad Batch, because I'm actually really excited for that. That's the things. Well, my lad really loves the parts of Star Wars that I don't really sort of venture into, like the Clone Wars and stuff like that. And he's kind of really sort of ignited a bit of a passion for other stuff, other Star Wars stuff that I wouldn't generally sit down and watch. So both of us are really looking forward to the Bad Batch, because we watched the episode from season 7, was it, from the Clone Wars, and it looks fantastic. Trailer looks great. Really, really excited for that. And also, I think Star Wars has progressed from where it was sort of Force Awakens, hasn't it? You know, Disney's output for Star Wars has really sort of, got the ball rolling. We're not dealing with Lucasfilm anymore, where they put a film out every couple of decades, or a film series every couple of decades. This is Disney. They are interested in putting out material, and they've got to pay for that $4 billion purchase price from Lucasfilm that they made. I dare say they've made that money back several fold now. But yeah, it's just reignited a collecting sort of bug outside of vintage. So it's great, and the show is. The show's part of that, definitely. Being part of the Generation Skywalker is fueled it, without a shadow of a doubt.
And I also think with you, I think The Mandalorian, the success of the show, has helped you as well. You're loving the shows, you're looking at the product that's coming out. I mean, you've been all over the place. You've bought helmets, Black Series, you've bought the Razor Crest. I think you bought a big Lego set. You have really delved into it.
Have you opened it up, Mark? Did you?
No, I've kept it.
Oh, Jesus.
I've kept it sealed. I haven't got the space to display it, but there is a company that sell acrylic displays for specific Lego sets, and they've done one for the Cantina. And I just think, oh my God, I could see that on top of a coffee table. I really could in my office. And I just think, I could well purchase one of those, and me and my lad would sit down and make the cantina setup together. But I have to say, I do like the fact that it's mint sealed in the box. So yeah, I get as much enjoyment out of looking at it on the picture on the box than I do from making it. So it's a win-win situation, really.
I'm coming to you, Mark, because I never know whether you're going to like things or not, but Lego's so much fun. We're talking about the Mos Eisley Cantina. What can you tell us about it? And do you like it?
Oh, mate. I think it's fantastic. I really, really do. It's very rare that something new comes out and I think, oh my, I must have that. And I don't collect Star Wars Lego. There's never really been a set where I thought, oh my, I've got to have that. All these UCS collector's sets, Star Destroyers, the last Millennium Falcon they brought out was fantastic, but I never had that sort of urge to actually buy one, because these are considered purchases. I mean, this one's over 300 quid. So that gives you an idea of, A, the amount of Lego involved and how big this set is. So, yeah, it's not cheap. But I think you would quite easily get 300 quid's worth of pleasure just looking at the box, to be honest with you. It's a work of art. It's a masterpiece. For me, when you think about when you were little and you were playing with Lego and you were thinking to yourself, wouldn't it be great if they did Star Wars Lego? This is the set that would ultimately you would piece together in your dream. If you were given 3 wishes, this would be what you would create. And I think Lego have absolutely knocked it out of the park on this one. The figures, the set, how it opens out, the speeders that you get with it. You get that sort of I can't remember the name of the speeder you get with it, but it's the one you see in the background with the 3 square jets at the top. You see that flying past. It's got that in it. It's got that little round sort of hover type speeder that sits outside the entrance. It's got a new sculpted dewback figure, and it's got sort of several, I think there's 21 figures with the set, and nearly half of those are exclusives. So you get Ponda Baba, Dr. Evazan, Sand Trooper, Garindan, the Imperial Spy, Sand Trooper, Luke Ben, 3PO R2, Han, Chewie, Greedo, and a couple of the aliens, and the Cantina Band. And this thing opens out. And that's what I love about this. It is, you could have this on display, open it out, and look at it for hours. They've got it absolutely nailed. I think it's fantastic. Now, does that answer your question, Stu?
I must admit, I think we've all been on a bit of a journey with modern. I think anyone that listens to it would have seen quite a movement. I mean, Craig, you're probably the most disciplined, but I mean, you've been buying Ewoks to paint £100 sets.
Yeah, I mean, customizing. Who'd have thought it? That's new for me. And I'm nearly done. Watch this space. There will be a show very soon.
Maybe a customizer's project?
Well, that's the point, isn't it? So the guys that do all this dioramas that actually would build something like this could do a better job. One of the things I hope we do get to cover more of next year is, or say that this year now, I suppose, is the 90s. I know Grant's really passionate about his Phantom Menace stuff, and we've talked about Thrawn trilogies and things like that, but there was so much happening in the 90s. I think it's really not classed as vintage. Is it still classed as modern? But it's a real rich area I think we could delve into.
Definitely. I think that was always the plan, but stuff started to come out so thick and fast. We got swamped by new announcements, didn't we? But yeah, I really want to look at Shadows of the Empire line. That's one of my
I love that.
side focuses.
Nice. Have you got Dash Rendar's ship?
I do, yeah.
Fly that around?
It's in the box.
I would quite like you to actually, maybe at the first event which opens up, you could maybe put like a GoPro on it and fly it around an event, pretending you dash. That's something else for you listeners to look forward to. Craig's got a lot of work with his TikTok videos and his customising.
It's quite an action list for me.
I remember playing the Nintendo 64 game. Is it the first stage where you are in a snowspeeder attacking the AT-ATs?
Yeah.
that level. I remember a mate of mine having an N64 when he first came out, and he got that game with it, and it was the night that Princess Diana died, and we'd gone round to his house, and we basically played this game all night. We stayed at his house, and we were absolutely, tanked up to the eyeballs, and woke up the next morning, flipped on the television, the news was on. It was all over the news, and Princess Diana had been killed in the car crash, and we just looked at one another and said, "Oh, right, okay," and we just put the N64 on and started playing Shadows of the Empire straight away, as if nothing had happened.
How do we carry on from that?
You had to have been there, really. It was just one of them things where when you flip on the TV, oh, Princess Diana's dead, and we just said, "Oh, right, okay." We just put the Nintendo on.
I think it's a quite coping mechanism to deal with the grief you obviously experienced, Mark.
I was in Turkey when she died. It's funny, isn't it? We all remember where we were. But so now I know, when I was in Turkey on that holiday, that Mark was sitting in his pants playing N64.
How did you know I was just in my pants, mate?
That's just how I'm picturing it. Really dirty, like red and white stripes, but the white's gone like grey.
Surrounded by empty beer cans.
Like a scene from Train Spotting.
Well, that's the trailer for our Shadows of the Empire special.
Hello, it's Kimberly here. I just wanted to say happy birthday to you all. What a ride. I know you all put in lots and lots of work to the podcast, and I know it takes ages to put these things together, and you put all your passion into this, and you work really, really hard. So I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you for inviting me on the beer show. I really enjoyed it. Do have a bit of a hangover the next day, though, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, happy birthday. And now I'm off to drink. I think there's at least a pint and a half in here. Cheers to you. Happy birthday.
As we said, or we've already stated tonight, we created Generation Skywalker because, the Star Wars universe is just wide open. So we wanted to cover whatever we felt like covering. So many different areas. And one of the things was to bring experts in or bring guests in. And we've done that to a point this year. I think we'd all agree that we'd like to do that a bit more. But we did have a couple of months where we recorded a lot of shows. And in September, we decided to do Book Month. Dan, coming back to you on this, can you remind us about Book Month? How many shows we did, what we covered, what guests we had on. And we also run a competition, didn't we, that month?
So through September, we did a series of 5 shows covering the books of Star Wars, both fiction and non-fiction. I think on the first show, we just generally discussed our favourite books. And then we went on and did a more focused collecting book show. We also had some guests on. So we had Richard Hutchinson from TVR come on, and he discussed his love of the expanded universe. We did an interview with Stephen Sansweet, where he discusses all of the books that he authored. We also had a show covering the Thrawn trilogy that we've already mentioned. So we had Mark Newbold, Mark Mulcaster, and then we also ran, like we've mentioned, like Stu mentioned, we ran a competition. It was basically the clash of the book covers, a book cover death match, if you like. So each of the hosts, we all picked out several of our favourite covers from various novels. And then, we played them off against each other on several social media platforms. And the participants who voted each got to vote which host's cover they liked the most. And at the end of that, the people who voted got put in a draw for a big pile of books that we put together as a prize.
Yeah, so let's just have a little listen to what we covered in there.
So I'm just going to give you something now. You'll think, right, yeah. So that's what Harrison was like on set, because I love this. I really, really warmed to it. So if you don't mind, just indulge me. It said, Harrison met George and Mark at Hampton's for lunch. Mark had previously told Harrison that neither the film nor George picked up the tab for lunch. It was strictly everyone on their own. Money was tight on the Star Wars, and the budget having continued to creep higher and higher, but this seems more from George's natural ways rather than the budget truly necessitated. After all, how much could a few burgers add to the multi-million-dollar budget? He goes on to say, at the end of the meal that day, the waiter put the check down on the table. Harrison reached over and picked it up. He turned to Mark Hamill and said, "Go ahead, you're done. Go home. Don't worry about this," he said, waving the check. Mark said, "Are you sure?" And Harrison nodded, so Mark said okay and left. Harrison slowly perused the check, nodding. Looks right to me. He put the check down in front of George, got up and headed for the door of the recording studio. And so it just shows that sort of, Harrison was their big brother to Mark Hamill, insisting that Mark doesn't pay, but just gives it to George. And it's just these little behind the scenes things which we would have never known about.
I understood why they killed off Chewbacca, and I totally get that, because when you heard interviews with the writers, and Chewbacca's an incredibly difficult character to write for, because he doesn't speak and he just grunts and growls, and other than him becoming pretty much a bodyguard for Han Solo, who spent 20 years drinking coffee and watching from the sidelines, it was an incredibly difficult character to write, so they had to bring out a new series with a bang. What's interesting about it is it adds so much depth to the Phantom Menace, and that, like, how many people knew that Darth Plagueis was actually alive during the Phantom Menace, and that Darth Sidious was actually still his apprentice at the time. And it was about how Darth Plagueis had actually set so many things in motion, but he didn't realise that Darth Sidious was already playing him well before Darth Sidious was playing his master.
The cover is really iconic, isn't it? But there's no writing on it or anything. So was that ever a gamble? What was the thinking behind the cover?
Well, that was really interesting. I mean, they were asking me for a cover image, and we came up with the gold Darth Vader case, and then I submitted that as a possible iconic cover, and then the designers, who were just really sharp, sold the publisher on the idea of doing it as a 4-section photo and black and gold. And then the idea of not putting the title on the cover just shows how iconic the image of Darth Vader was. And I thought that was a pretty bold move. But they realized that most books are shelved in bookstores with the spine out. And even if the cover was put out, it would attract people because they would say, well, whoa, what's this? And it did. It worked very well. One of the few books I've ever seen that doesn't have a title or any writing on the cover. We have some wonderful pictures of Anne. We needed photos of the figures off the cards, and so I've always bought 2 or 3, or I've tried to get 2 or 3 of each figure on a card, and had not taken them off a card for many, many years. And we got all the dupes, and we have a picture of Anne on the floor lying on top of a pile of maybe hundreds of ripped cards and bubbles. She and some other friends have helped to take the figures off, catalog them, put them in little plastic bags with numbers on them so we can find them, and then we put them in little cardboard bins in alphabetical order. Sometimes if it was Darth Vader, there'd be 2.5 bins filled with just variations of the Darth Vader figure. How many Darth Vader figures can you come up with? He doesn't change the way he looks. Well, more than you think.
With all of the knowledge, data and imagery you've amassed creating these books, you're pretty well placed to actually create an online resource that could probably blow the SWCA out of the water in terms of design and accessibility. Is this something that's ever been considered, discussed, or would it be treading on too many toes? And
yes, we're working on one. We're working on a database that will become part of the virtual museum, and so that's in our plans, and that's something that's in the early stages, and I'm confident that it will happen.
When Heir to the Empire hit #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list, and they did kind of put it out almost as an experiment, it really was a statement of, well, okay, Star Wars has been pretty quiet since, you'd say, 86, 87, end of Ewoks and Droids. The Ewok movies have come out. West End have just released the role-play game in 87, and then there's not an awful lot, apart from, I think, the 3D comics. I think there was pretty much nothing released apart from West End stuff all through that time period. Now, if you're a gamer, which I was, I consider what people call the dark times to be amongst the busiest periods of my fandom, because I was role-playing 3 nights a week. So it was Star Wars, the most immersive Star Wars we'd ever had since we were running around in the playground pretending to be, Han, Luke and Chewie and stuff. But you get to 91, Heir to the Empire comes out. They're almost testing the water. I've seen that things where Lucasfilm sort of said, kind of testing the water to see if the interest is still there. And obviously it was. So when Heir to the Empire comes back and goes in at number 1, and it was very much pitched as being the sequel to Return of the Jedi, that's kind of lost in the static these days, when Air Now and all the other books and comics of that time are now legends, like you said a moment ago. When that came out, there was no doubt this was the sequel to Return of the Jedi. We weren't getting films, but we were getting books. So everybody who wanted to know what happened next, it was this, and very soon after Dark Empire, it was those 2 books and comics that started to fill the gap. And blimey, talk about unplugging the dam.
I know sometimes you can kind of criticize it a little bit, but there's kind of beats where it's kind of like almost kind of referencing back to the original trilogy, which you can completely understand why they did that, given the reason why they released a book in the first place. But I think it helps tie everything together a little bit. I mean, I know possibly now we would say it's a bit fan servicey, but I think back then it was quite nicely done. Just a couple of exchanges between like Han and Leia and stuff like that, where I think he says, "Oh, I don't want to discuss it with committee," and all that kind of stuff. That kind of banter that we saw on screen is now in printed word in a new story.
I think there's a distinction with the types of books we've just spoken about. So the former ones, the ones where they're fans with a passion. They've written these guides to proofs or prototypes or coins. It's come from a place where there's a lot of love, and they cherish that aspect of their hobby, and I think that really comes through these publications. But then there's another school of books which I think just come from that tradition of price guides for antiques, because that's a long tradition in publishing, and Star Wars became hot, so they said, we better do a book about this new trend, and that's sort of the genesis of those, and they're quite distinct things, aren't they?
Now this is a tiny little book, quite literally pocket book. You're probably talking less than 2-inch squared. I would have thought. It's a lovely little treat by Steve Sansweet, which came out in 1998. And before I go on, these can be picked up now for about £3 or £4 on Amazon, probably eBay as well. But what I like about this is it was perfect because you can just have it in your pocket. You can, if you go to Star Wars conventions or celebrations, I took this with me because I thought, why not? And you should have seen the look on Steve Sansweet's face when when I went to Rancho Obi-Wan and people were queuing up to get book signs, and he was doing his big book signings for his latest book, and I rock up with this tiny little thing and join the queue, and he looks at me as if to say, "Brilliant, is that it? Thanks very much."
And the final came down to 2 absolute masters of Star Wars art in Ralph McQuarrie and Drew Struzan. So, I was very, very pleased to see those 2 in the final, and, actually happy for either to win. So the results are in. We've totted up the results, and pleased to announce live on air that Splinter of the Mind's Eye has walked away from this competition victorious. And I think it's a well-deserved win. I've got no problem with that result at all. I think it's a wonderful cover. I think it's got a great... Are you doing victory laps around the office, Stu?
Just telling the wife that I've won. She's pouring the champagne as we talk.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to be on the winner's podium there.
Sorry, what were the figures? How tight was it?
Not tight at all. You walked away with it. So yeah, it was a clear winner on every platform, and we've got a few comments from people that we can read out. On Facebook from Jonathan Evans. I'm a fan of both of these incredible creators, but my favourite cover here is Splinter, and by a fair margin. In many respects, the draftsmanship is not as good as the Vision cover. One could even call it slightly dated. But the composition and emotion in that image is just too powerful to overlook. Vader looking down on Luke and Leia just as he'd look down on us. Where would you be if Vader confronted you? On the floor, terrified. Even reduced to a tiny thumbnail, that Splinter cover conveys a whole story of fear and indomitable power. No faces to do the work, just silhouettes. It's a classic. Perfect image.
It was close. In fairness, boys, I think we made some good choices. The only one I wouldn't have put in there, honestly, was the Dan's first choice. I mean, Dan, I kind of get Death Troopers, but what was that?
It's awesomeness. That's what it is.
He's making out like he's drawn the things in the first place.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to that, because I didn't just win. I absolutely slaughtered them. I mean, it was so one-sided, and they all kind of like claimed. Oh, actually, it's funny you bring that up, Dan. Actually,
Oh God.
it's really strange, right? I heard something on that show recently when I think I was putting together one of the montages or something, and then you come out with, well, sure, everyone's chosen something with Leia, Luke, and on the cover. I'm the only one that hasn't. That's why I've chosen this god-awful one with this bald geezer with a lightsaber. And I looked at the covers, and every one of us had chosen one book cover which didn't have Luke, Han, and Leia on the cover. So your argument fell down. I just wanted to bring that up just to make sure you were aware that you weren't the only one that chose one. All of us had one. I mean, I had the spaceship one, Craig had Maul, and Jez had the Stormtrooper on a stake, which, I mean, well, let's not talk about that, because we all know my thoughts on that.
Talk us through Death Troopers.
It's just something a little bit different, isn't it? Because it looks like a complete spin-off between Saw in Star Wars or something like that. It's making me go, what on earth's gone on there? Death Troopers is splattered full of blood, like someone's really taken one to the jugular, and you've had some sort of pumping all over the place. And you've got two hooks suspended down. One is just there to the left of Star Wars. The other hook is through the Stormtrooper's eye lens. And he's also got a hole just in his forehead, like he's just, almost been double tapped. And obviously it's a severed head, because there's all sorts of stuff hanging down underneath the helmet. It's just gross, which makes me think, interesting.
I want to come in here because I think this is a disgrace that this is in the 8 as well, right? One, you didn't have zombies in Star Wars. I mean, come on. It just makes a mockery of the whole universe. Secondly, Star Wars is for everyone. It's a family thing. In our intro music to this show, we've got Alec Guinness saying there's no horrors. People get shot and they drop down. No blood, no guts. And that cover straight away just ruins everything that Star Wars was built. It's just a disgrace.
Strong words.
You say about zombies. What's to say that that's a zombie thing on the front cover? All right, we're judging a book by its cover here. Nothing to do with zombies on the front cover. And you say it makes a mockery of the Star Wars universe. I mean, hello. Sorry?
A hook in the eye.
Yeah.
Take my son to watch Star Wars films. I wouldn't want to see a hook going in someone's eye.
Do you let your kids watch Clone Wars, Stu?
Excuse me,
There's zombies in that. There's zombies in that.
Yeah,
There's
that's
zombies
ridiculous, isn't it?
No, it's a good episode.
This is Star Wars, and to promote it like that, I think Jesus needs to take a long, hard look at himself.
No, but it was great though, wasn't it? I think joking aside, we had a great time recording it. Just shame we had to end up with you lording it over everyone else.
I really enjoyed Book Month. I enjoyed putting it together and enjoyed the topics, and I think literature-wise, there's so much other stuff to cover. I would love to suggest that September we do it again.
I'm just looking now. I've purchased 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books off the back of doing that. All not cheap books either. All decent reference guides and various bits. It was expensive. So we can do it again. But
would you be up for doing Book Month again, Craig?
I really enjoyed Book Month. It was a lot of work. We did a lot of shows that we were recording, enhancing, and then the social media competition on top of that daily, monitoring that, working out that knockout competition was a lot of work. But yeah, I would absolutely do it again.
Well, we'd start earlier this time, I think. After recording them and putting them aside. I definitely think Book Month is a goer again.
Happy birthday to Generation Skywalker. It's been 1 year, and I think it's a great podcast. Some really good people involved and some really good discussions and contributions to the hobby. And hope there's many more years to come. So, happy birthday, Generation Skywalker.
So what else did we do? Obviously, I did record 2 diecast episodes. The first episode I recorded with Andrew Norton about the diecast vehicles that came out in the vintage era. And then I had Josh Blake on, and we went through the micro collection toys. Now, I think at the beginning of the first episode of that, I say like a six episode run. I've only done 2 in a year. But that's still on the agenda. I mean, the next one I want to cover from that is the West End Games. That is an area I'd love to go to. Any of you boys played the West End Games?
I bought the book back in the day, the very first game book, but I had no friends, so no one to play it with.
Definitely interesting. I think there's loads of diecast. I want to cover things like Micro Machines, and there's other diecast toys from the vintage period, isn't there? And
there's the funny bootlegs. They might be a little sort of margin notes episode rather than a full episode, but I think they're quite interesting. I think with these things, it's finding the right expert, isn't it? So if anyone is listening and you are an expert in West End Games minifigures, then get in touch.
Yeah, and I wanted to come right up to date as well. I mean, the Disney Elite stuff, we've obviously covered it briefly on previous shows, and I know, Craig, you're a big collector of that, and I mean, also the Hot Wheels cars. I think there's no end of them now, character cars. There's collectors out there for it, or they wouldn't keep producing them. So all just different areas. I think the diecast still has legs, but it will be as and when, like you say, find the right expert, do the research for it, and put it together.
And they released just 11 diecast ships in that time. Now, what I want to ask you first of all, Andy, you'd have done more research than most into this. Why was the line so brief and such a limited number?
So I've given a lot of thought to that. I think it's a scale issue. It's a little bit like the 12-inch line. The 3 3/4-inch toys are so popular that ships work. Ships are relatively affordable. Figures are cheap as anything back then, still pocket money. And then you've got this line of tiny spaceships that aren't even to scale with each other, that mums and dads are being asked to kind of splash out on for their kids. And speaking as someone who used to have some of these, we loved it, and they worked. We didn't have a lot of the big ships, so they worked with our 3 3/4 inches. But if you had a die-cast X-wing and you got your Luke Skywalker, you really want the bigger ship. That's my view on it. And then they realised sales weren't there, so come 1980, let's not make any more.
Before we move off the Darth Vader TIE Fighter here, quite an interesting thing you've got down here that some people didn't know, I didn't know until I was browsing your website, is that this ship was used for the eyes in dark crystal of a character.
Yeah, one of the Skeksis, and again, this is this is not my observation. I've seen a few people refer to this over the years. I suppose the one bit of debate, is it the Darth Vader TIE or is it a painted grey TIE fighter? And I think unless you've got it in hand, you're not really going to be able to say. The fact that the Skeksis' eye is grey, I'm leaning towards it being the Darth Vader TIE. But if someone was to tell me, no, it's the TIE fighter that's been painted, then I wouldn't argue with them. It's Skek Tech the scientist.
You just mentioned that you remember the micro collection from when you were young. Obviously, it didn't last very long. How long was it available?
Well, it was only available at retail for about 6 months, and most of it just sat on shelves. That's at least how I was introduced to it. You go to the Toys R Us or KB Toys, that was always the discounted Star Wars items. So they ceased production on the line January the 5th, 1983. So everything that was in pre-production at that point was ceased, and everything that was retailed, the orders stopped. So all of the order numbers that we have from internal Kenner paperwork, we don't know that they actually produced that many items. And I'll just give you just a really quick idea of what they were estimating that first year. They were looking at about 300,000 for some of the smaller sets. It was kind of a test in the beginning, but it was also something that they had put a tremendous amount of time and effort and money into, because they really thought they had a home run.
I'm always quite surprised that it wasn't as successful.
Well, it was just ahead of its time. I think at that point, I think the reason that they really thought that they had a home run on their hands was because of the interest of that time, the Dungeons and Dragons figures that were made of zinc and lead, and I mean, I didn't know any different when I was a kid. It was something that was cheap. I liked miniature items. I liked the idea that it was more realistic in a lot of ways than the 3 3/4 inch, and that's arguable. But to me, just having like a whole play set, I thought was fantastic. It was a great idea.
And I think one of the best shows we recorded, all four of us were on it, and I think it was with Jez, was the beer show. And obviously we had Craig's better half, Kimberly, come and take us through a beer tasting show.
Yeah, I loved the beer show. The beer show came out of me noticing just how many indie beers were being released that referenced Star Wars in one way, shape or form. So the idea was that it would be fun to get a few of them and try them on air. To your point right at the start, we haven't been able to get together and have a beer together, so this is a good excuse, all in the name of creating fun and entertaining content for our listeners. But yeah, we tied that together, talking about beer-related merch. I think Kimberly really added something in terms of helping us understand the beers we were sampling. She's a beer expert, beer writer, works in the industry, so that was a nice addition. And yeah, to my mind, it's up to that point, it's been a pretty unexplored kind of aspect of Star Wars. And, you know, I started writing the blog to go with it and just couldn't stop. I just kept finding more and more things to write about. So we will definitely be following up on that and having beer show number 2.
I think we should do it in person next time.
I don't.
No?
Put me off my beer, looking at your face. I must admit, I thoroughly enjoyed that show, Craig. Enjoyed the blog, everything about it. Amazing.
Well, some thoughts on what we can do next time. We've already got candidate beers lined up, and we've got some. I think because we're able to point at that show now and point at that blog and approach brewers and say, look, this is the kind of thing that we're doing. They want to get on board with it now. So we've had a good response from independent breweries and people out there making these beers. So hopefully we can get a few more of them onto the show to speak in person.
Do you know what? Every show I look at as well, I think it gets me into collecting, because I collect the beer cans now. I have an idea in my head for something when my garage is done. And that show obviously made me buy the Rancor teeth thing as well. I mean, it's crazy doing this kind of stuff. It's just costs you a fortune.
So while you've just finished those dregs, you can be lining up the next one, which is Tiny Rebel. So this is your pudding. Yeah, I mean this comes from a brewery called Tiny Rebel, which is in the heart of Grant Criddle country. So they're based in Newport, Wales, and I think they're one of the out of all the craft beers that we've talked about, they're one of the sort of craft beers that I first noticed with this Star Warsy aesthetic. And I think around 2012, is it that far back? 2015, they started brewing this beer. They wanted to create a very rich porter that had quite a different, unique flavour, and they went for sort of pumping it full of marshmallow. And when this brand was born, they called it Stay Puft, out of homage to their second favourite film franchise. And when they kind of amped that up later down their line, they sort of made it an Imperial. What they did to the design was they basically stuck a Stormtrooper helmet on there with some 80s slatted shades, and that's sort of stuck. That's stuck as a style. And they do these quite limited beers where they fuse this marshmallowy porter with different types of flavours.
So I absolutely love the Imperial versions of this. It's 9%. In terms of the other flavours they've done, I'm a massive fan of the salted caramel one. So they did a salted caramel one. I actually took a suitcase full of it to the last celebration to hand out, and we went to a kind of beer share, so that went down really well. They've also done a coconut cream. Last Christmas they did a limited edition pack where they did a praline one, and they've also done a bacon waffle variation. So there is some weird and wonderful spins on the Imperial Stay Puft, but they keep going. They just did an espresso martini one. This one that you've got now, the Irish cream variation, that's actually been out for a little while.
I opened it and that sweetness really hits you, but then it's really dark when you pour it out. Wasn't what I was expecting off the smell.
Yeah.
Literally black, isn't it?
Yeah. So in terms of a porter, I mean, you're definitely going to see that this is kind of a strong porter at 9%. It is going to pour that kind of black. I absolutely adore porters and also stouts, but I guess the notes that you're getting from this, a little bit of chocolate, obviously those marshmallows are coming through, and then you're going to get a real hit of coffee, especially with the addition of the Baileys. But I think, it gives you that kind of smooth aftertaste. I absolutely love it. I definitely can envisage drinking more of these at Christmas. And even if you wanted to get some of these now, they will age really well, and you could crack them open next Christmas as well.
And obviously we've also had a couple of weeks, we said we wanted to bring in some guests. We've only had a couple of these types of interviews, but where we asked people to bring 5 items, and we had Ross Barr and Zia both come on and give us what they brought to the table.
I do like listening to like people where they've come from and the journey they've been on to get where they are. Certainly, I think Ross's and Zia's interviews were both really insightful for that. Yeah, and putting around the house and going about your day, it's great listening to that kind of stuff.
It's someone else's passion, isn't it? It's what they are into, and so often it can be so different. I mean, on Zia's interview, the story of his Australian friend.
The story behind the French organa, the Meccano one, it's about the friendship, really. It's about the friendship in the hobby. And I actually wanted to illustrate that because, it's the hobby is great. You collect all these things, but, more than collecting a piece of plastic, it's about the people around you, the community, the people on the Facebook. All the friends you make, and the story behind that layer, it is about the friendship. It's about the people who help you to get the item. So the story behind it starts with I've got a couple of friends who are part of the Vader vintage group, which I administer. Darren Eddy, who's based in Australia, and Sven Schneider, who's based in Germany. So what happened, one summer, I purchased a 12-back R2 in Australia, and I found out my friend Darren, who's based in Brisbane, was going to come to London. And I asked him, do you mind if I get this R2 shipped to your address, and then you can bring it along to London? And he said, yeah, sure. He was such a gent, and he said, yeah, no problem, I'll bring it along. So at the same time, my friend Sven contacted me, and as I say, Sven is based in Germany, and Sven said he showed me this picture of this the French Meccano, the Leia, and he said, do you want it? I said, yeah, I'd love it. I didn't have it, and I was really looking forward to get a foreign card. So I said, yeah, I'd love to have it. I didn't have enough funds, but I managed to sweeten the deal with Minton card Vader that I had. I didn't want, and Sven was happy to exchange or do a part deal with this. So we agreed a deal, some cash and that Vader item. But thought occurred to me, right, I don't have any problem to ship my Vader, but I was really, really concerned about, getting that layer, how he's going to ship it and just to make sure it doesn't get damaged. So when I was talking to Darren mentioned, yeah, I'm on my way to London. And, by the way, yeah, I'll come to London. I'll drop the 12-back, the R2, and then I'm off to Germany to visit Sven. So I said, oh, are you? Okay. I said, do you mind taking that Vader to him and bringing back the Leia? He said, yeah, sure, mate, no problem. As I say, what can I say? Darren, what a guy. I met him in London. He gave me my 12-back. I gave him my Vader to take to Sven. He went to Germany and came back with the Leia, and we had lunch. Darren, his lovely wife Sarah, in a Turkish restaurant, and this is where he gave me my French Leia, and I was super excited. And it was great opportunity to meet Darren and to have some time talk about Star Wars, his collection and what his life and all that stuff. So it was great.
And Ross's story of the Darth Vader 12-back, when he bought those 12-backs in the wild, and he got there and the Vader had tape around the bubble. Rather than me saying it, I'll insert it here, actually, that story, because it is a great story.
Very early in my Star Wars collecting, I did a deal with a gentleman, one of the very earliest collectibles that I bought in person, and certainly the first 12-backs. This guy had and often advertise. Actually, I had an advertisement on Craigslist at the time. You folks don't have Craigslist, but you probably heard of it. It's an online ad service that a lot of people sold stuff through before Facebook came and took over a lot of that. People still advertise on Craigslist, but it's gone down. But I had an advertisement at the time to buy Star Wars collectibles, and this guy contacted me, and he said, I have Death Squad Commander number, blah, 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 blah. Stormtrooper number 89246. What he was reading was the skew on the top left, right? You know, on the top
That's
left
right, on the front of the card. Yeah.
Right. So the guy, he wasn't a collector, didn't know what was going on. Obviously, no one described Star Wars collectibles that way, but he had 512 backs and sent me pictures of them, and it was great. And so I went. I was, you ever? I don't know if you've done a lot of scoring in the wild, but the feeling when you're on your way, with a pile of money to go meet someone in person for something like that, it was the biggest one that I had very early on. And I was just pumped. I get there and I go and I meet this guy, and these 12 backs are pristine. He had bought them, I think, at a movie theater or something, maybe a department store or something at the time, all the way back early when the line first came out. Had them in his attic and had forgotten about them forever until he found them, saw my ad, and met me up. And it was 5 dead mint 12 backs: a Chewbacca, Death Squad Commander, Stormtrooper. I'm forgetting the other one, and a Vader, all beautiful, except for the Vader had tape all around the bubble. And so I asked the guy, I was like, these are all dead men. What's the story with this one? And he said, when I was doing research about these figures, I saw that if I had a double telescoping Darth Vader, it would be worth significantly more money. So I opened the figure to see if it was double telescoping. Right? And so I'm like, excuse me? What? And so he had taped it back on the bubble, right? And obviously, had it been these were all 12As too, so it could have been a DT. But had it been a DT, removing it from the card would have been the worst thing that he could have done.
Did you tell him that?
I mean, I just told him, you probably could have told what it was. You could have figured out what it was, not by opening up the card. But what's done is done. He had done it.
Yeah, well, there you go. So what we will say is anybody that fancies an interview, and anybody, doesn't just have to be collectors. You could own one beta figure, you could own the best collection in the world, you could own no figures, but have a real passion for Star Wars. We would love to interview anybody, wouldn't we? I think we'd all agree on that.
Hi guys, I know exactly what you're thinking. Who's that handsome dude first thing in the morning? Well, it's Rich here from the Vintage Rebellion, and I just want to say a huge shout out to Generation Skywalker. Congratulations on hitting your 1 year anniversary. I know how hard it is to put out a show. Stu knows exactly how hard it is, and to go 1 full year with all the shows, the contents, the blogs, everything that you've put up has been absolutely tremendous. I really enjoyed listening to your show. I love reading the blogs. I really enjoyed my interview with Craig Spivey. Hopefully we'll have another one soon talking about comics or something along those lines, Dark Horse, whatever. Okay, but keep going guys. 1 year down, 20 more to go. Well done.
I want to go back to, at Christmas, we did Star Wars Trivial Pursuit, and I was quizmaster, and I think competing Craig, and it was Jez, Grant, and we had Mark Hockley on, didn't we? And this stemmed from a comment Jez made on a previous show saying, I can beat anyone at a trivia game, which to do with the movies.
Has never been very good at quizzes and has continued that in a different format.
That's not true. That's not true. Right. Film quizzes. Star Wars, the actual Star Wars films, I will pan everyone.
Right. Jez has just done that. We will be playing live on a standalone show, Star Wars Trivial Pursuit. Yes. And Jez will pan everybody. We heard it here. Okay?
So we thought we'd test him on that, and it turned out to be really, really tight. I think you eventually won, Craig. I mean, you fell quite badly behind, but you came through and won, didn't you?
I did. I wouldn't say I gave the best performance of the evening, but the dice was in my favour.
I'm going to own up to something now. Okay, I just want to play. The very first question was to Mark Hockley. Let's just have a quick listen to that.
Right, Mark. Here we go. You have got 4. So, what colour would you most like to go to start with?
I'll go with orange, please.
Orange. Interesting. Okay. Who destroyed the last of the Death Star's Sentry ships?
Oh man, that's a tumbleweed moment. Who's right?
I'm gonna have to hurry you.
You really question yourself, don't you? R2.
R2D2. I'm afraid, Mark, you're the first person to get a question wrong there. It was Han Solo.
Oh, well, he's not a droid, a creature, or an alien. That's what confused me.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point.
I was thinking
Fair
it can't
point.
be Han. It's got to be R2 or Chewie, and I don't remember Chewie doing it. It must have been R2. I don't know. Yeah, never mind.
Now, Mark gets that question wrong, okay, because he's landed on the category aliens, creatures, and droids. And he gives his answer, and the answer was Han Solo. And he questions it, and he's like, oh. So he gets the first question wrong, and you can tell by his voice he's a little bit embarrassed because a lot of the questions that come were quite easy that followed. And he goes, I didn't think it'd be Han Solo because he's not a creature, an alien, or a droid. And I didn't tell him at the time, but I accidentally read the wrong question off the card. So perhaps he would have had a better
rematch.
Oh my god!
When he said that, I looked back at the card and I thought, oh yeah, because there's two colours very similar on the card.
Oh dear.
So, so Mark, bad luck. That's just the way it goes sometimes, isn't it? But that was fun. I mean, I don't know whether people enjoy listening to that kind of thing. If you just listen to it and join in and answer the questions, it's great. But to record, it's fun. It had some quite decent download numbers actually. But yeah, it was a fun evening anyway for us, wasn't it?
It was.
Hey, Generation Skywalker. Chris Letty, aka Vintage Viewport from the 6 Scale Scavengers Hot Toys podcast here. Just wanted to say happy birthday. Congrats on 1 year of podcasting, YouTubing, all that fun stuff. You guys do such a great job. Can't wait for what's to come. And, I feel honored being the first featured guest interview. And, every guest since has been just amazing. Added so much to the community. We really appreciate everything that the entire Generation Skywalker podcast team does. Just keep doing what you're doing and definitely look forward for what's to come. So, again, happy birthday, congrats guys, and here's to many more.
Obviously, we go back to the modern way about 3 or 4 shows when Dan uses the term custard guys. And I can't believe none of us picked him up on it at the time. I thought he'd said it, but I didn't question him at the time until I did the edit. And I thought, yeah, he's calling custom people custard guys. I mean, it's not even close as a word, Dan.
I was hungry.
I'm waiting for the Mark Daniels visual representation of this. The little custard guys logo for the t-shirt.
Mark, there you go.
It will be done.
I can see it in my head. It'll be amazing.
It'll be done. And I'll do a t-shirt for Gibbon fella as well.
Gibbon fella, yeah.
Well, there you go, listeners. We've got a t-shirt line coming.
I want one that just says it's a positive film. Kimberly loves that. She hears it all the time.
Can we get a picture of Grant scraping stickers off of Woolworth's floor, whatever he was trying to? What's that all about? I can imagine him, can't you? With like a wallpaper scraper.
Totally.
Little
90s Grant with his dreads.
Yeah.
On the knees with a wallpaper scraper.
Jez isn't here to defend himself, but I think he kind of thinks I bully him sometimes. But I mean, some people are easy targets, aren't they? And Jez is one of them. I mean, I really would urge all of you more to call him out on stuff. Because he's a funny little chap. Oh, here he is. Strangely enough, Jez, you've just joined us.
Hello.
Hello.
We were just talking about you.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice to be spoken about. Well, I hope it's nice to be spoken about. How you
How
doing?
are we, my friend? Yeah, we're all good.
Is this some sort of party I'm joining?
Did you not get the invite?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, all good.
Funnily enough, we're just going through some shows, Jez, and actually, I'm going to just hand this straight over to you for a minute.
Oh, don't.
So, hello, welcome. But Jez, the running stormtrooper. we've obviously put out 2 of the Running Stormtrooper shows on the Generation Skywalker platform. Could you just tell us a bit about the podcast?
Yeah, brilliant. It was done with a very handsome chap, a good friend of mine called Stuart Skinner. To which, dude, I wouldn't have been able to do it without you, bless you. It was lovely doing this. Throughout the year, the idea was we were just going to do a little episode with some running tips or some fundraising tips, and a sort of going back over a story of one of the things which have been accomplished in the past, be it Guinness World Record or London Marathon, 40 miler, 100k, etc. And just catch up with regards to how the 1,000 miles was going throughout the year, with all the things that the year was thrown at us. And it was just a bit of a chinwag, really. And it was just meant to be a sort of 45 minute show, which I was hoping that people could listen to whilst walking the dog, or maybe even going for a run themselves. And it was just a lovely catch up as well, which I really enjoyed. I thoroughly enjoyed making, and I've had a few people ask if we're going to be making any more, but no, it was just that series of 10 to accompany the 2020 1,000 mile challenge.
Lovely stuff, Jez. Lovely stuff.
My target, I was already delighted with, because when I woke up on that morning, when I woke up on the 20th of December, I had just reached my 14,000 target. So I was over by about £10 or so. So £14,000 I was at. And then within the space of 5 minutes, I looked at my phone and it said 16,000, and then 17,000, and rising. And I couldn't believe it. I had to turn the notifications off of my watch, because I just needed to be able to run and see what was going on. And I could still see the notifications coming on my phone. But mate, I carried on running. I put my helmet on, and I had the biggest grin underneath that helmet. And I was just like, doesn't matter. You've got 18 miles to run. Grizzle out. Just hang on in there. Your foot can be fine. You have 18 miles. You will get this done in 3 hours and 12 minutes. And let's just hold on, because you are getting sponsorship now for these charities. And it was the best feeling. And the rate then started to drop off, the frequency. But for that first half an hour, 45 minutes, it was unbelievable, the amount. I think I must have had about 400 donations. And having read through all the little notes and all the well wishes and things people had put on my Virgin Money Giving site about what they had seen, it was lovely, really, really nice. So yeah, I was already flying high before I'd even run 3 miles. And there's not much more to report really about the last run, apart from the cloud, which I stopped and took a photograph of, because as you know, we're both sort of Star Wars nerds and stuff like that, and I was just in my own little Jez world running along, just thinking, yeah, got 3 miles to do, 3 miles to do, 3 miles to do. I know I've hit my target. I know I've hit my fundraising target. This is all good. And I looked up at the cloud, and maybe I just was hallucinating, I don't know, but to me the cloud was in the shape of Yoda from Star Wars. So I looked at this cloud and I was just like, oh, there's the pointy ears, there's the heads, there's in fact there's 2 eyes, because the previous blog which I'd written was called Do or Do Not, There Is No Try, and I just thought, well, yeah, Yoda's there sort of wishing you well. That's just where I was. Maybe I was just, I don't think I was dehydrated, but maybe I was, maybe I was seeing things. But I stopped to take a photograph of that.
Sorry to spring that on you. People are going to think that we have set that up. Oh, let's bring Jez in now. But Jez, you have just literally joined the call because you've been working.
Yeah, I've not even taken my jacket off properly. I've just come in and said, "Hey, babe, the lads are upstairs." But what I do have with me, I didn't want to preempt it. I didn't want to be the only one, and I was aware it's a school night. But I've got a beer with me because I haven't opened it yet. But yeah, because it's a party, and I assumed Craig would have. So no offence. Are you all enjoying yourselves on this birthday celebration?
We are. So when you say you haven't quite taken your jacket off properly, have you got like one arm in and one arm out?
That's true. No, I just there you go. There's the zip. So I'm all right now. Yeah, it's just already just sat down with you guys in a virtual environment. I got a smile on my face, and it's all good.
Jez, Generation Skywalker. What have you taken from it this year? What have you enjoyed doing? And
Mate, actually, it's been a real eye opener, and I hope I'm not going to over any old ground of what you guys have already said, but just the book stuff, it's made me more interested now in sort of Thrawn series and everything like that, and then jumping around all over the place. I'm still looking at tiki stuff on eBay. Thanks, Craig. I was looking at some Star Wars beers. There's a new one which has just come out from the Stormtrooper Beer Company.
There is, yeah.
Again, thanks, Craig. So the beer tasting stuff, but just even though I've only participated in a few of them, listening to every single one, it's been really, really interesting. And you guys have really broadened my mind with regards to the modern stuff as well. I've loved working with Grant and Stu, and back again with Mark, and then bringing Craig into the fold and his expertise and Dan's passion and knowledge for the new stuff. I think it's been great to be a participant of this journey, and I think you guys have got such a collective gathering of intellect with regards to the Star Wars world. For me, with the podcast TVR, which we've been involved with in the past, it was all about the vintage, but it's just so broad. It's just like you've taken the reins off now, and you guys, I'm just thoroughly impressed with what you're able to knock out and the content, not just from a podcast point of view, but now, all the YouTube and then the enhancements and the quality of the website. I could go on forever. You guys have knocked it out of the park in this last year. Congratulations.
Yeah, we'll have to get you on more often. So, cracking on, Jez. Nice to have you with us. Open your beer.
Yeah, all right then. Okay.
Beer Show 2 is on the way, Jez.
Oh, amazing.
Boys, we've gone through what we've done, but I've just said I'd love to do another book month, do it in September again, different types of shows. Craig has already alluded, a second beer show, revisit that. I've already said about a follow-up to the Diecast. What else do you think we will be doing in the second year? I know we've just already said we're going to have to follow up on the reproduction debate because of the amount of feedback and comments we've got on it. So what do we all want to see? What do we all fancy doing?
I would really like to do a Star Wars music show, so covering soundtracks, not just John Williams stuff, but also music from The Mandalorian, and just discovering the different sounds musically Star Wars. So some of the live events, the live concerts. Yeah, I think that's what I'd like to do next, I think
that's something you're quite passionate about as well, Jez, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there have been some incredible podcasts out there. I mean, can you imagine movies without the music? You just couldn't, could you? It's definitely one which we will look to do, but it's not something which we can just throw together. A lot of research involved for that, just to do it credit. And it's something I would really, really like to participate in.
Dan, anywhere you would like us to go?
I think I mentioned the 90s. I think definitely. I mean, I bought the the executive box set, the big video box set a few weeks ago, and I bought it with the intention of probably selling it on, but I never had one in hand. It's amazing, and it just got me thinking about all the stuff from back in the 90s around that time and where I was at certain points when things were released. And I think it'd be a real good bit of a nostalgia fest now. It's that long ago. We'd have a bit of a hoot going through some of the stuff that happened back then, and also commentaries. That holiday special commentary we did, that was great fun recording that, and we should definitely find something else to commentate on.
I mean, Mark, you want to relive the 90s, don't you? Sitting in your pants playing N64. I mean, we've already discovered that tonight.
Well, yeah. What a beautiful image that is for everybody to be left with.
Well, Dan wants to revisit that moment. That's sparked him tonight.
Dan, you're welcome around any time, mate. I'll give you a first-hand account of it.
Craig, you've come up with some of the interesting concepts this year, but you're often outside of the box. What have you got exciting for us?
Well,
I'm looking at you now.
Before we talk about that, there are a couple of things that we started but didn't make good on. So I just want to put these back on the table. So the first one was the idea of small space collections. So right back at the start of lockdown, we were seeing a lot of big collections showcased from the collecting friends in the United States who had big cellars and big spaces to have large collections. And we did do a call out for people, particularly in the UK, who didn't have that real estate. And we did. We got some good feedback. We got some good contacts, and we got some. And I think you might have recorded some interviews, Stuart. Did you?
I got a few people who had shared their collections with us to just record a few bits to why they collect like that, because some of those collections were incredible. There was the one chap, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he'd only got a top shelf in a wardrobe, and he'd got like 4 deep mocks, so he would rotate them around because that was only the space he had got that he was allowed to have to display that, which was incredible. You know, he had some lovely pieces in there, just having the one shelf, and that is fascinating to me. And I think he recorded something on why that's the case. And
so I think we should revisit that and celebrate that, because I think we can all relate. We can all relate to that. And the other thing that got brought up and never mentioned again was Mark's Hoff Echo-based diorama. So it'd be good to check with Mark and an update on that.
I've almost finished it.
Excellent.
I've almost finished it, and what will also surprise you is I've filmed every step of the way on it.
Wow!
I've edited the whole thing myself.
Wow.
Ready to put up on the Gen Sky page thing.
Well, I hope nothing happens to that file, Mark.
I was going to say, is that going to happen after you finish building your Cantina Lego?
No. Well, that's on the back burner at the moment. I've got priorities. This has taken priority over everything at the moment.
Si, being the second most creative.
I'm slightly disappointed with the second most creative epithet, to be honest with you. Slightly disappointed, but let's not dwell on that. I'd like to see a really good Dagobah one, complete with proper water, stinking swamp water, maybe even some baby newts in there, just to really bring it alive, literally. And I'd want a sort of pneumatic X-wing that could rise and lower out the swamp. Yeah, that would be cool.
An Echo base interior done like you do those worm farms where you see it from the top to the bottom, and you can see all the tunnels and all the interconnecting rooms and stuff. Do something like that, sort of etched into some polystyrene, so all the sort of command centre and the medical bay and all that is joined up and on different floors. I think that would be quite cool.
Well, I believe I actually replied to the poll, or at least I did some interaction on Instagram with regard to this, and Mark did get my vote. I wanted to see the Hoff diorama built.
This is a pretty fix, this is.
So there we have it then, Mark. So you're going to build Echo Base in a kind of ant farm, wormery type of display. If you can do a time-lapse video as you go, and perhaps we'll release the video on, say, Christmas Eve. Something like that.
Yeah, Christmas Eve 2023.
A little treat there, and I know Mark won't let us down. Definitely got the most time on his hands out of everyone I know.
Thanks, boys.
Yeah, so I do have some things planned. I've got a couple of ideas for blogs, which I'll talk about a bit nearer the time I've got them completed. But I'm speaking to some interesting people about interviews. We've spoken about tonight about how we want to broaden it out, and I've got sort of a few people that I'm sort of down the line with in terms of trying to set up times and things to get those interviews in. So look out for those. This is me interviewing people is a new thing. It's usually Stuart who leads on that, so I'm looking forward to doing a bit of that and bringing something a bit different to the table.
Jez, any kind of shows which, we just said the sounds and whatnot, but I know that you're really interested in the footwear.
The footwear?
The footwear from the movies, I think you said to me once.
I don't think I ever said that to you. Oh, we segueing into here. No, we spoke about music for sure, but also from Ben Burt's soundtrack point of view, I would love to do a little bit of analysis, or you could even just talk to people about the various sound effects things. I know that's an easy one. That's just a standalone. But then going on to other specials, I think it'd be great to. And this isn't a running Stormtrooper thing, but the whole cosplay world, you see it now. It's huge. It was huge when we went to FAX, and remember the fantastic time which we had going off to FAX. But you see, Craig, your experience of the cosplay world is huge. The competitions which we have at celebrations, be it from human cosplays to some of the more intricate machines, you know, the loaders and stuff like that, which we've seen. I think to learn more about cosplay, when we had Stu, we had Steve Buckley on the Run and Stormtrooper podcast, who is from the UK Garrison, who said that he would absolutely love to come on and you know, enlighten us on that world of cosplay. I think would be fantastic. You know, and a massive part of the Star Wars culture lore is lightsabers. And you know, we there's so much to talk about there, from the very basic first lightsaber which you saw in episode 4 to dark sabers, you know. And so there are so many things now that, you know, that, as I say, the shackles are off, that we can really go into. One thing in which I spoke to Grant about was trailer analysis and looking at trailers. If we think now about the hype and how beside ourselves we were when we, you know, as adults saw the episode 1 trailer, you know, I can picture it now. My goodness, I wore out that VHS which had the Duel of Fates on, but the trailer itself, and then the Chewie we're home moment from you know, episode 7. The trailers have fueled and made our Star Wars fandom even more so. Yeah, and then you look at that and you contrast it with the original trailers, which, you know, from a different time of episode 4 and 5, or 4 mainly. I think having a look back and commentary analysis of the trailers would be a bit of fun. There are so many things which we can do. It's just we've got the passion, we've got the inclination. It's just finding the time to do it.
Yeah, some great suggestions there. And obviously you also told me about doing a whole show about people related to Star Wars who have got 2 first names. Like, you just brought one up, like Ben Burt. I think you suggested Jake Lloyd and Anthony Daniels and Rusty Goff. But I'm not quite sure whether that kind of show's got legs, mate. But maybe you can, if you come up with a plan, we can look at that as well.
Yeah, sounds great.
Do you sit in your van at work, Stu, and think of all of those lines? Or does it just come to you?
Yeah, I'm a bit like Craig, actually. I've got a little notebook full of all sorts of ideas, but I've started 3 blogs and never finished them because I'm normally editing or something. So it's not. I need to get back in that mindset, like and smash some of them out. Yes, that's a great suggestions.
Hey Generation Skywalker, it's Andy Spoons here. Happy first birthday. An amazing achievement for an amazing show. I'm sure you've got many more years ahead of you. Happy birthday!
Also, visuals. First of all, we started off just with the enhanced shows, and since then you've added unboxing videos and Skywalker Blasts. Is there any more scope that we'll be doing other things as well, Craig? I mean, you can't really do an unboxing of a vintage toy, can you? I suppose you can. But sometimes I do think to myself, maybe it'd be nice to see a review of something.
Yeah. I mean, unboxings are easy and they're short bits. They add something to the conversations we've had. I think it's particularly on the modern show because you are showing people what you get in the package, and you don't need to have spent a lot of time with it to go, well, that's nice. It's what I was expecting, or it's not what I was expecting. You know, we can take it to the next level and do some proper reviews, and it would sit quite comfortably alongside the unboxings. I think the Skywalker Blasts, they are more a retrospective cherry pick of the things we've done. You know, we put a lot of time and effort into this, and you know, there's that fear that some of it might get lost. So the Skywalker Blasts are a way of just pulling it out and repackaging it for maybe a different audience or somebody who's searching for something specifically. We can put the keywords around it. So if you are looking for Chinese bootleg comics, which is a bad example because that was one of the shows we hadn't enhanced, but I might go back and do that. I might go back and put some images around that recording. But I think that's stuff we can just keep doing alongside our regular output. But yeah, I'm sure everything will just grow and change. And, you know, I think we'll talk about events in a minute, and I think that'll be the next level for us.
So obviously we've already mentioned blogs as well. I mean, they'll keep coming the more we grow and stuff. But events, I mean, we've already spoken about that we launched this during a pandemic year. We've been in lockdown. There has been no events. I think the last event some of us attended together was Farthest From Christmas 2019. It feels like a lifetime ago. I mean, that was always something we spoke about, was doing shows or videos from events, road trips as a team to places. Craig, I'm going to come back to you. I mean, what kind of things do you think we could do? I mean, I know we've discussed a team visit to Skellig, for example.
One of the ideas right back at the start, when we were brainstorming this, was the charity shop shuffle, which was such a wonderful idea. I might not go into detail about that because we might revisit that, and that might be something that we can showcase down the line. But I think when we're out and about and we are free to roam the land, we can do things like show reports. We can do things like, store special events. They're launching a new Lego set, and I know people out there who queue for Lego, so we can just tell them to film it and we'll have that content. But none of that's happening. We are limited to that kind of activity. But I think when that does kick in, our social channels will come into their own. So if you are not following us on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, get on it, because I think that's going to be a real platform for some of that stuff. We can do it in the moment. We can be there. We can be live. We can walk the floor of Echo. We can be on a night out at Farthest From, and you can see who's in the pub with us. I mean, that's as real and as grassroots as it gets, really. So I think it will open up new avenues once we can get out and about and hang out with each other again.
Definitely be a live video from my garage opening with the Tiki Bar.
Yep.
Generation Skywalker get together.
Yeah.
Jez the barman.
Whole world is invited.
Yeah. So lots and lots of ideas, and hopefully the events. I'm pretty sure Echo will be on in October. There's one to look forward to. Tiki Bar opening will be before that as well. So we will be getting together. It will be fun. Craig, I'm going to come back to you. You already mentioned it earlier in a new social media platform that people can get involved in.
Yes. So Facebook is a funny one. We set up our Facebook page as an entity, as a business, if you like, because that's the best way for us to see what's going on, analyze what's going on. It gives us a lot of tools to put content out there. But what that does do, and what Facebook likes to do, is, because that's the way we're set up, is sort of penalizes in a little way. They see us as a business and somebody who should pay for the privilege of having our content seen. So while our social media is quite healthy, Facebook sometimes, I think, suffers from not getting into people's feeds quite as much as it maybe should. So what we are going to do is launch a Generation Skywalker Facebook community group. That's a closed group that anyone's welcome, but it's where we can all hang out, get together, and if something's going on, it'll be better publicized in people's feeds, so we can hopefully have longer and deeper conversations about the things that we talk about, and indeed the things that the listeners and the followers want to talk about. And it's also hopefully going to be a place where we can see the trends, gauge the things that people are interested in. So in some ways, the listeners can inform what we talk about, and it becomes more of a two-way thing rather than us just producing stuff and spitting it out there. So in the next week or so, or as we launch this, you might have had invites already, but get involved. Come and join the group, and we'll get some conversations going, and we'll all hang out and have a wonderful time.
I just think that sometimes, like the reproduction debate, I mean, our feedback's been all over the place, but it would have been great to have had an actual discussion with all the different types of people in one thread, wouldn't it?
A number of us are admins on other Facebook groups, and it's a good place to have these, like I say, longer and more in-depth conversations rather than a Twitter exchange that'll fizzle out after a few messages. So hopefully it'll give us the step change across the social media that we'd like.
It's just been a great year, isn't it? It's really, I think we spoke about the pandemic at the start and getting through all of that. There's a light at the end of the tunnel now, and happier days ahead. But with this show and taking it forward, I think it's the same. It's the same view. It's brighter days ahead.
Exciting times.
Yeah.
And we got a movie on the horizon, which is a cross between Top Gun and X-Wings. That's going to be amazing. But you've probably already discussed that.
You should apply to be an extra.
I could. I should. Maybe I have. I just, NDAs and stuff. No, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? That would be the business.
Yeah, it'd be all right if they give you a helmeted character.
6 hours in makeup.
What, like an X-Wing pilot?
Yeah, well, no, because you can still see the face.
Yeah.
Firefighter pilot then.
So once again, a massive thank you to everyone who is supporting us and listening to us. If you are listening, please, Apple Podcasts, a review and click on that 5 stars. That does really help us move up the charts on Apple to be more noticed. So that's the one thing we could ask our listeners to do. But make sure you check us out on our social media. I mean, it's already been discussed tonight. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook by searching Generation Skywalker. Over on YouTube, Generation Skywalker, find all those videos that we've spoken about tonight. Go to any of your podcast providers. Obviously, we use Podbean as our main base, but you will find us on anything, any way you want to use it. Just again, search for Generation Skywalker. If you've got an Alexa, just say, Alexa, play Generation Skywalker. That will make sure that will come through as well, and you can shuffle through our playlists on there. And obviously, the best place to go to is really the website. It has had a bit of a facelift recently. Just head over to www.generationskywalker.com. You'll find links to everything, and of course, the blogs are also over there. And make sure you check out Facebook, like Craig's already said, that new Facebook group. Discuss anything you want, share pictures, share your collections, anything. We want to see everything. We want it to be a proper community group where everyone just gets involved. So keep an eye out for that. And boys, any last words?
Not really, just to echo the thank you. It's why we're here. And if we're doing things great, we love to hear about it. If we're doing things wrong, we want to hear about that too. So yeah, give us your feedback.
Yeah, definitely feedback. That's a great shout.
You know, we've all said what we hope to do in the future, what we want to do, be it, you know, another beer one or music or what have you. But it'd be really interesting to know if our listeners have got any ideas, or if there's anything that our listeners think, hey, what about this? Or have you even seen this? Why don't you look into this a little bit more? Yeah, just offer it up to the listeners that what do you want for the rest of 2021?
Great point, Jez. And the same goes, we've already mentioned it earlier, if you want to be a guest on the show or come and do an interview, or maybe join a different one of the podcasts, maybe you have a love for modern, perhaps you would like to put yourself forward as a guest host once a month, we're always open to anything. Always good to have people coming on the show. Well, boys, congratulations, massive thank you. Everyone's worked so hard. It's been an absolute joy this year. I mean, no stress of it. When times have got busy, you can just stop. It's been lovely. I mean, have really enjoyed the new setup. But it is for the first year. Good night from Mark.
Good night.
Good night from Daniel.
Good night.
He sounds like he's gone over the other side of the room. Good night from Craig.
Happy birthday and good night.
And it is good night from Jez. Lovely for you to join us, Jez, there.
Oh, lovely to be joined. And thanks for joining us, everyone, and good night.
And it is good night from me, and thank you all once again for your Generation Skywalker.